Welcome to Sleepy History, where history doesn't sleep, and the truth is too wild, too filthy, and too downright ridiculous to stay buried. Today we're peeling back a page the medieval church tried to glue shut, with holy shame, the sex laws that forced even your genitals to confess. The punishments so brutal, you'd beg to stay single forever. And the saints? With sex toys made from pig guts and wood. This isn't textbook history. This is Sex Menu of God. The sinful buffet so scandalous even God had to look away. Tell us in the comments, if you lived back then, how long before you got burned at the stake just for glancing at a woman's chest? A day, an hour, or mid-breath? Let's begin. Buckle up. It's about to get wholly filthy. Part 1. The Lord's Sex Menu. Oi, you little soft-ass kids of the modern world, listen up. These days you're losing sleep because your crush left you on scene. Back in my day, folks got burned at the bloody stake for breathing too hard while kissing in public. You cry after a breakup. Boo fucking who? My neighbor's wife once moaned too loud. While shagging next morning, the priest showed up with pitchforks and a bucket of holy fire. She didn't even get to finish her sentence, let alone the orgasm. You lot think heartbreak hurts. Try breaking your back during sex and then being accused of demon possession. A fella once sprained his hip while doing it standing up, and they tied him to a goat and made him confess to Satan. Sex wasn't sexy. It was a battle between your horny little soul church law and a pair of wool trousers held together by goat piss. And don't even get me started on positions. Today, you're into doggy cowgirl reverse UFO bullshit. We only had missionary. And if you did it on a Tuesday straight. To fucking hell. No cuddles, no aftercare, just guilt and maybe syphilis. So before you go crying on TikTok because someone ghosted you, just remember my mate Gerald got boiled alive for shagging his wife doggy style during Lent. Grow a spine or go back to crying on TikTok. So, picture this. You're sitting in a cold, piss-scented stone house. Your ass is numb from kneeling on the church floor since sunrise. You ain't eaten. You ain't bathed. And all you want to do is squeeze your wife's titty before bedtime. Too bad, mate. God's got a fucking menu, and you're not on it. I call it the Lord's Sex Menu. It goes like this. Monday, no sex. Tuesday, no doggy. Wednesday, no tit grabbing. Thursday, God's still watching. Friday, fish day. And not that kind of fish, you sicko. Saturday, maybe if she don't cough. Sunday, you so much as get a stiffy. Straight to fucking hell, boy. See, nowadays, you lot cry because your crush left you on red. Back then, if your wife moaned too loud, the village priest would light a torch and scream, "She's possessed by lust demons." Next thing you know, BBQ witch night. You worry about getting ghosted. We worried about getting burned at the stake for breathing heavy. The confession, booth of horny sins. I remember once sitting in the confession booth. You know, the little wooden shame box where you whisper sins into a hole like ordering porn from God. Some lad walks in, shaking like a leaf. He whispers, "Forgive me, Father. I saw my wife's ankle," and my willy twitched. I said, "Bloody hell, son. That's not just sin, that's medieval porn. You think I'm joking? Ankles were scandalous. Even elbows were a one-way ticket to the devil's sauna. And don't you dare try anything spicy. No licking, no slapping, and absolutely no reverse cowgirl. That one, death by fire. No trial, no appeal. Just yeehaw and then yell-o. The church's sex laws. Now, here's the shittiest part. The church banned sex on over 120 days a year. All of Lent, no sex. 40 days before Christmas. Nope. Before Holy Communion, nah. After Communion, still nope. On Sundays, hell no. On Wednesdays, Fridays, Saints' feast days, eclipses, and, wait for it, during thunderstorms. Why? Because thunder is God listening. If he hears slapping sounds under the sheets, boom, your soul's on the express train to purgatory. Positions of purity. You want to talk positions. There was one acceptable way, missionary. No grunting, no eye contact, no joy. Just wholly pumping straight-faced like filing your taxes. If she coughed during sex possession by Satan's asthma. If she giggled, witchcraft. If she rode you, she's no longer your wife, she's Satan's bicycle. And don't even think about having sex standing up. Because if your feet weren't touching holy ground properly, the priest said that was levitating sin, aka floaty fucking for the devil. There's a record from 1315, I shit you not, of a couple who shagged standing near a well. Villagers thought the moaning came from the water. Next morning, they dragged them out, dunked them in the well to cleanse their sins, and then, get this, sealed the well with rocks forever. Because apparently, even water can get horny. Modern people be like, ugh, I'm 28 and still single. Mate, in 1322 you'd be dead buried, and your ghost would still be a virgin. You'd need papal permission just to hold hands without going to hell. And don't get me started on orgasms. If a priest found out you enjoyed it, they'd call you a heretic. You weren't supposed to want sex. You were just a reluctant seed spreader, a walking nutsack for Jesus. So next time you're in bed, soft lighting lo-fi music, her hand in your hair, your toes curling like Renaissance scrolls, remember, back then we had hay in our arse crack rats watching us stroke, and a priest banging on the door yelling, "Repent, you filthy carnal donkeys, so shut the fuck up. Say thank you." And tonight, when you're hitting it from behind with scented candles and Bluetooth speakers, just know, back in 1344, that same act would have earned you 12 lashes, public shaming, and a nice warm seat on the church's favorite invention, the heretic's dick roaster. The confession booth of horny sins. If you thought the Lord's sex menu was bad, wait till you see the church's refund policy on horniness. All right, sit your horny ass down. It's time we talk about your dirty little thoughts. Welcome to the Holy Confession Booth, sponsored by Guilt, Fear, and Eternal Blue Balls. Back in the good old medieval days, you didn't need to cheat or send nudes to get in trouble. Nah, just thinking about tits was enough to get you labeled as Satan's side chick. You know how nowadays you send a risky DM and get left on scene? Back then, your wife could accidentally cough during sex, and boom, you both got accused of demonic foreplay. No joke. They called it Satan's sneeze. That's not a joke. That's real church logic. Tell me, my child, did you see your wife's ankle and feel your worm twitch? Did you kiss her with tongue? Did she make a noise that wasn't a prayer? Hell. Straight to hell. Yeah, they had a full checklist of horny crimes. And it wasn't just about what you did. It was about what you felt. Think about that for a sec. Felt horny during Lent sin. Dreamed about thighs during Easter sin. Smiled while banging your wife, that's pride and lust. Double sin. The church banned sex on over 120 days a year. That's like saying, sorry babe, can't smash tonight. Saint Scholastica died 300 years ago, and I might go to hell. Mondays, no sex. Wednesdays, no sex. 40 days before Easter. Forget it. 40 more before Christmas. Better get used to your hand. Oh, and Sundays, if you so much as think about doing it. Boom! Straight ticket to hell's BBQ. OMG, I haven't had sex in 2 months. I'm so dry. Bitch, please. People in the Middle Ages went years without touching anyone except their goats. And even that got regulated. And if you thought you could at least touch yourself, masturbation was considered an open invitation to the devil. If you nutted alone, they believed demons literally flew out your dick. Some monks even wore painful belts with spikes on their crotch, just to prevent random boners. Imagine edging yourself with barbed wire, all for Jesus. And women. Oh, sweet baby Satan. If a woman moaned too loud, even if it was just once, they called it a witch's orgasm. Yup. Next thing you know, she's getting burned alive for having good pussy energy. So next time you're crying because Tinder's dry, or your crush ghosted you, or your vibrator died, just remember, back then getting horny was basically a death sentence. They didn't swipe left. They swiped you into a fire pit. Confess, child. Did you nut on a Tuesday get the rope? No sex if she's breastfeeding. All right, lads, gather round. Let me tell you about one of the dumbest sex rules we had back in the day. So imagine this. Your wife just had a baby. She's tired the baby's screaming and you're horny. But guess what? If she's breastfeeding and you even look at her chest for too long, boom, you're a filthy sinner. Straight to confession. Yeah, the church said that sex during breastfeeding would curse the baby's milk. They believed the milk was holy and your dirty thoughts could turn it evil. So no sex, no touching, not even a cheeky squeeze. And if someone caught you getting handsy, you'd have to confess your sins in front of everyone, fast for days, or sometimes get kicked out of the village. And don't think this was just for full-on sex. Nah, mate, even kissing your wife while she held the baby could get you punished. One poor bloke in our village, they called him Nipple Nick. He gave his wife a hug while she was nursing, and the priest said he was corrupting God's milk. They made him kneel in sheep poo and pray for forgiveness. You lot cry these days if your girlfriend doesn't reply to your texts. Back then we cried because we touched a boob at the wrong time and got smacked with a Bible. And it wasn't just for men. If a woman made a sexy noise while feeding, they'd say she was possessed by the devil. Seriously. They thought demons lived in nipples. What the actual fuck? So next time you say, oh, it's hard having a newborn, just remember, we had to survive months, sometimes years, without sex because the church thought boob milk was holy, and lust made it explode. Now shut up and pass me that turnip wine. My nipple still hurts from 1347. Sex positions that offend God. You think your love life's hard because your girl didn't heart your Instagram reel? Try getting roasted by the bloody church for having sex the wrong way. Yeah, no joke. Back in my day, there was one way to hump without getting dragged to confession missionary. Man on top, face to face, eyes closed, thinking about Jesus. Basically, two sad corpses bumping into each other in total silence. Anything else, sin, filth, animal behavior. Straight to hell, no lube. Take doggy style, for example. Nowadays, you lot call it spicy. Back then, the church said it was bestiality. As in, you're fornicating like a goat, and goats belong to Satan. One poor bloke in my village tried it once with his wife. They called it the devil's angle, and he had to walk around town holding a dead fish as punishment. Don't ask me why the fish. Medieval justice was just wet and weird, or cowgirl, the woman on top. Oh, no bloody way. That was treason against God's design. A woman in control. That's how witches are born, they said. Apparently, letting a woman bounce on top could invert the divine hierarchy. And nothing scared the clergy more than an inverted hierarchy, or a bouncing tit. Even something as innocent as spooning, you know, the sleepy cuddle hump, was a crime if it looked lazy or unorthodox. Because the church believed sex wasn't about pleasure. It was strictly for making babies. No fun, no noise, no flexibility. You weren't allowed to even smile during it. One lad I knew swore he once did it standing up against a barn wall. His wife moaned. A monk walking by heard it screamed, "Lust demons," and threw holy water through the window. They spent 3 days confessing, 1 day vomiting, and 40 days fasting from sex and sausages. And here's the kicker. Even missionary had rules. You couldn't do it during Lent on Sundays or on over 100 holy days. And definitely not if you were too into it. Moaning, sin. Eye contact, suspicious. Reaching climax at the same time. That's orgasmic witchcraft. Honestly, you lot today panic when someone screenshots your nudes. Back then, if someone caught a glimpse of your bare thigh, you'd be accused of waking the devil with your knees. So yeah, next time you complain your girl won't try something new, remember this. Our biggest fear wasn't rejection. It was getting hanged for trying cowgirl. The love letter to God about your balls. Right. So I woke up this morning feeling a bit frisky. My wife bent over to pick up a turnip, and boom, one boob flopped out of her shift. Left boob, to be specific. And I swear on St. Armpitius, I felt my balls twitch. Now in a normal world, I'd say, "Hello, darling, maybe pinch her arse and we'd get to business." But nah, not in my time. Back then, touching your own wife's tit without God's permission was basically second-degree sinning. So here I am, pen in hand, writing a letter to bloody God. Dear Heavenly Father, today I touched my wife's breast, accidentally, well, kind of on purpose, but with 3 fingers only. I did not suck, I did not squeeze. I just admired. Then she farted, and I felt things. Please forgive my balls, for they knew not what they wanted. Amen. Also, please confirm if I may enter her holy garden this Thursday. She finished breastfeeding last month, and it's not a feast day or anything. I checked the monk's calendar. Twice. I promise to use the missionary position only. No doggy, no spooning, no cowgirl. I don't want to burn in hell again. You think I'm taking the piss, don't you? But this was real.
We actually had to ask the priest for permission to shag our own wives. You know how y'all send you up texts at 2 a.m.? We had to send a freaking letter to God and wait 3 weeks for a sweaty monk to say yes? Or your soul's going to rot. And let's say you did get carried away, like maybe your hand slipped to the right boob, or worse, she moaned too loud. Then it's off to confession. Public one, in front of your neighbors, while old ladies threw stale cabbage at you. So don't tell me you've got it hard now. You get ghosted on Tinder. We got excommunicated for being horny on a Thursday. And God help you if she was still breastfeeding. Touching her then, that was considered polluting holy milk. Some poor bastards got exiled from the village just for trying to sneak a titty during Lent. Meanwhile, y'all be watching Netflix and chillin'. We had psalms and blue balls. The punishments for horny crimes. Back in my day, God help us, it weren't enough to just be poor dirty and always hungry. No, you had to be holy too. And by holy, I mean bone dry. You so much as looked horny in church, and they'd drag you out by the ears screaming about Satan's willy. I still remember that one poor sod, Tom with the weird eye. He was caught staring at his wife's ankle during Mass. An ankle. You think your phone camera's got zoom? Try medieval lust with zero internet. Man saw a freckle on her shin and nearly fainted. Next thing you know, the priest's screaming fornication, and Tom's trousers are off in the village square. Boom. Public shaming balls swinging in the breeze while Sister Margaret throws cabbages. And the women, Christ have mercy. If you so much as moaned during sex, you were a witch. No lie. They thought a woman enjoying herself was proof the devil had taken over her bits. There was this girl, Elsie Sweet Thing, married off at 15 to a man with the libido of a mushroom. One night, someone heard her make a sound, not even a full moan, just a squeak. And by morning, she's tied to a chair being interrogated about clitoral demons. Some poor bastards got worse. Caught touching yourself in the outhouse behind the barn. Wherever. Didn't matter. If someone snitched or the church got suspicious, you'd be forced to confess in front of the whole bloody village. Yes, Father, I touched me own tallywhacker while thinking about Goody Ann's elbows. Bam! Week-long fasting. Maybe a whipping. And if the priest was in a mood, candlelight castration. You heard me. Slice and dice, holy style. It weren't just personal sins neither. Timing mattered too. You think your ex ghosting you was bad? Try getting accused of fornication during Lent. 40 days of holy blue balls, and if you slipped, they'd say the baby was born cursed. They even had a bloody sin calendar. No sex on Sundays, feast days, fast days, menstruation days, saint days, moon's too bright days. There were literally more banned nights than allowed ones. Oh, and if your wife was breastfeeding, definitely no sex. Pollutes the holy milk, they said. What the fuck does that even mean? One guy touched his wife's boob while the baby was napping, and he got exiled. Exiled. Like he was a war criminal, not just a tired husband with one functioning testicle and a dream. I knew a lad Jeffrey the bootmender who got hauled in just for smiling after a roll in the hay. Not even during. After.
The priest saw him walking funny and smiling on a Tuesday morning and just assumed sin had happened. Jeffrey ended up on poop digging duty for 3 months and had to wear a sign that said, "Touched a lady with joy." People were terrified to even kiss properly. One sneeze during a kiss and boom, possession. Demonic affliction of the tongue. I swear they thought a sneeze was a devil trying to escape through your sin hole. And the punishments Jesus save us were bloody medieval. Well, obviously. But you know what I mean. Men were stripped and flogged in the square. Women were locked in towers or pelted with stones. You could be forced to walk barefoot to church every day, confessing your sin in rhyme. And some poor souls, they just disappeared. Off to the monastery, they'd say. Right. More like buried under the pigsty with a prayer and a shovel. And here's the kicker, most of this madness came straight from the church. Priests writing rules about what position you could shag, in what days you could do it, even how long you could thrust. Missionary only, they said, with no emotion. Emotion. Half the time we were just trying to finish before the cows walked in. Sometimes, if a couple got too enthusiastic, the village would say they were possessed. Not just sinful possessed, like Satan himself had crawled up their arses and made them do doggy. I knew one old couple who were married for 30 years. They tried cowgirl once, and the priest burned their bed. Said it was stained with unnatural urges. The poor woman cried for days. Not from shame, she just liked the bed. So next time you're crying because your date didn't text back, remember this: we were crying because we accidentally came on a saint's birthday and had to eat plain oats for 40 days as penance. You fear STDs. We feared being castrated by candlelight with a priest humming hymns in the corner. God's cockblock was strong. So next time your ex ghosts you, remember this: at least you didn't get dragged into the square and accused of fornication during Lent just because you boned with enthusiasm. Now, drink sin and use condoms. Pete out. Part 2. The lubes that made God gag. Right? Let's talk about the slippery stuff. You lot today have it easy. Cherry-flavored lube, glow-in-the-dark condoms, aisles of sex toys with Bluetooth and LED lights like a bloody rave in your pants. But back in my day, we didn't have Durex Play or Tropical Mango Temptation. We had pig-fat dead bees and cow piss. That was the whole menu. No, really. If you wanted to get freaky without tearing something important, you reached for whatever was nearby. Didn't matter if it smelled like the devil's armpit or gave you a rash the size of France. The goal was to not die during sex, though we didn't always succeed at that either. There was this one Lass Marjorie bit of a local legend. She got it in her head that smearing honey all over her bits would keep her sweet for her husband. Romantic right, except no one told her that sugar attracts ants. And not just regular ants. No, we're talking Satan's fire ants from the compost heap. They built a whole colony in her drawers before anyone noticed. She nearly died. Husband walked in, screamed, and joined a monastery. Then there was bee wax. Some bright soul thought, yes, if I melt some wax and shove it up there, it'll make me tighter than the church doors on a Sunday. Great idea. Until it cooled. Imagine pulling out a candle shaped like your own vagina. That's what happened to Edith. She lit it once during Lent to see if it was blessed. Caught the house on fire.
Now, let's talk fat. Good old pig lard. Slippery, yes. Smelly, also yes. Hygienic, hell, no. But it was warm, natural, and came free with every roast pig. So folks used it. Men, women, even monks. Not saying names, but Brother Giles had suspiciously soft hands. Only problem is fat goes rancid. Quickly. Especially when you keep it in a wooden jar next to the fireplace. And once it turns green, well, let's just say that wasn't a yeast infection. It was the plague's little cousin, but the true horror, cow piss. Yeah, some old texts said cow urine had purifying qualities. So naturally, someone somewhere thought, what if I used it? Down there, boom. Cow juice coochie, I shit you not. It was supposed to ward off demons and dryness. All it really did was give you a one-way ticket to Pissville and the local leper clinic. Worse still, some of the girls believed in folk magic. You know, keep your man faithful using love potions. Sounds cute, right? Until you learn the recipe, take 1 root of mandrake, add 3 drops of your blood, 7 of his sweat, and brace yourself. A spoon of dog semen. Stir clockwise while chanting Ave Maria. I wish I was making that up, but no, it happened. My cousin's neighbor tried it. Said she wanted to make her man fall for her forever. She drank it during a thunderstorm, dropped dead on the spot. Poor thing. We didn't know whether to cry, laugh, or dig her a grave shaped like a dog bone. The church, of course, hated all of it. Carnal pleasure must come with pain, they cried, while banning anything that might make sex enjoyable. They said lube was a temptation from Satan, and any woman who prepared herself was either a harlot or a heretic. If they caught you with a jar of anything too slippery, they made you confess in public. Forgive me, Father, for I greased my hole with duck oil on the feast of St. Agnes. And it wasn't just what you used. It was how you used it. Some women weren't trying to make sex feel good. They were trying to make themselves tighter. You see, virginity was everything. If your husband didn't bleed on the sheets after wedding night, you'd be dragged out and whipped for being a liar. So they shoved things up there. Cold clay, tree bark, even bits of stale bread. One woman stuffed her cooch with candle wax so tight she couldn't pee for 3 days. Priest said it was God's punishment for lust. I say it was bad gynecology. And let's not forget the healers. They weren't doctors, just old women with herbs, chickens, and attitude. You'd go to them like, I need something for love, and they'd hand you a jar that smelled like a horse's arse. You didn't ask what was in it. You just hoped it didn't burn. Of course, all this leads to one undeniable truth. We were horny, stupid, and absolutely terrified of our own genitals. That's why everything about sex had to be hidden, punished, or prayed about. Even if you just wanted to touch your wife, you had to follow a script. Dear God, I hath felt impure thoughts when my wife bent over to milk the goat. I beg thee to cleanse my mind and grant me permission to glance upon her left ankle. Do you know how many men went mad from sexual frustration? 1. His name was Jeffrey. He tried to invent a condom out of dried fish skin. It snapped mid-stroke and gave his wife food poisoning. She sued him in front of the bishop. He lost. So yeah, that's what sex was like. Slippery, stinky, and supervised by Satan-fearing peasants who thought a good shag might bring down the wrath of God himself.
And you still think your dating life is rough? Part E. Masturbation equals lost souls, the holy war on jerkin the gherkin. Right, gather round ye stinky goblins. This part's about something you've all done behind the haystack, the lonely knuckle shuffle. Yep, we're talking about masturbation, or as Father Gregory used to call it, the devil's handshake. Nowadays, if you catch a teenager having a bit of solo fun, you just roll your eyes and knock before entering next time. But back in the good old plague-pissin' Middle Ages, wanking was a mortal sin. A one-way ticket to hell, no refunds. You stroke it, God smites it. The church lost its holy fucking mind over masturbation. Priests, bishops, monks, all of them obsessed with what you did to your willy when no one was watching. You'd think with famine, leprosy, and people literally shitting themselves to death they'd have bigger problems. But nope, top priority. Stop the lads from touching their peckers, and I ain't joking. They believed that when you touched yourself, even thought about it, Satan took over your body like some horny little parasite. If your willy twitched, that wasn't arousal. That was the devil himself pulling the strings like a puppet master of dicks. My cousin Joffrey once got caught humping a loaf of bread. The priest made him sit in cold water for 3 days and chant Ave Mary every time he shivered. Bread was ruined. Joffrey still twitches when he sees sourdough. And listen to this. The church actually ranked sins. Murder bad. Adultery worse. But wanking off in a barn while thinking about the barmaid's ankles, oh no, that's a spiritual felony, my friend. God don't forgive horny farmers. I remember one sermon, every seed spilled in sin is a soul murdered before birth. And I was like, bloody hell, I've killed an entire village behind the chicken coop. So what did they do to stop us? Shame, fear, and more shame. They said if you touch your bits, you'll go blind. Touch it twice. You'll go mad. Do it daily. You'll die in your sleep, with demons chewing your bollocks. Seriously, that's what they told us. We didn't have Google. We had old Father Gorybeard shouting, "The devil is in your pants, boys. Smite the snake before it spits." But guess what? Everyone still did it. We just did it in the woods, with guilt, and sometimes tree sap. Semen holier than holy water. All right, so you're sitting there in your straw bed, right? Bollocks twitching cock harder than a knight's lance, just trying to survive puberty in the year of our Lord fuck knows. And suddenly, Brother Gregory, the monastery's local damp-scented sex guru, looks you dead in the eyes and says, "Each drop of your seed is a fragment of your immortal soul, lad. Spill it, and Satan drinks it." And you're like, bloody hell, I was just scratching it. That's what they fed us back then. Not just once, but every damn day. They said semen was more valuable than gold, more sacred than wine, holier than piss, blessed by the Pope himself. They weren't kidding. Some of them reckoned your jizz was literally your soul juice. Like your balls were tiny holy relics and your cock was the chalice of Christ. Or some bollocks like that. And God forbid, literally, if you spilled it somewhere that wasn't a married woman's fanny on a Tuesday after Mass. Because if you did, boom, soul gone, weak knees, blind eyes, spine shaped like a question mark, and eventually, madness, death, eternal damnation, all 'cause you had an itchy todger. You see, They didn't have Google or TikTok or even a picture of a titty carved on a tree. What we had were doctors with wigs made of horsehair holding up old scrolls and saying shit like, "A young man who plays with himself shall grow hair inside his belly and see demons in the fireplace." I mean, what? There was even a book, a proper book, published and everything. It was called Onania. Yeah, sounds like a demon that lives in your left bollock. And it warned lads like me that if you so much as gave your plonker a friendly tug, your spine would crumble, your eyes would fall out, and you'd start speaking in tongues. Not the sexy kind, the full-on, possessed by Satan kind. And I believed it too. First time I had a solo session behind the pig shed, I thought I'd committed war crimes. I ran to confession, bare-arsed shoutin', "I've killed a soul priest," gave me 10 Hail Marys, and told me if I did it again, my cock'd fall off and crawl back to hell. The best part, they also said sex itself was exhausting because you lost life energy every time you ejaculated. Not just fluids, your actual life force. Like you were a goddamn wizard leaking magic every time you came. So no wonder every lad in my village looked pale, hunched, and terrified of their own hands. We weren't allowed to enjoy nothing without thinking our souls were flanning out our arseholes. And that, my friend, was science in the Middle Ages. Wank once you're dead. Wank twice you're blind. Wank 3 times. Say hello to the devil. Now come along, 'cause next I'll tell you how they scheduled sex like a bloody medieval bus timetable. Spoiler, if you shagged on the wrong day, you'd burn in hell with your knob still attached. How to not touch your dick, the church's master plan. So there we were. Lads with 2 things, endless horniness and 0 internet. These days, you lot have full HD categories, playlists, even step-mum roleplay. Us. We had a haystack, a sore groin, and a priest shouting that our cum was a war crime. But did that stop the church from trying to stop us from self-milking? Hell no. They came up with more anti-wank inventions than the devil's IKEA. First up, the ice bucket for balls. They said if you're feeling the urge, sit your arse in a barrel of freezing water. Cool the loins, cleanse the soul, they said. Tried it once, never again. I swear on me left nipple, my knob shriveled into a carrot that's been sitting in the freezer since last winter. I farted, and it echoed. Next, the dick tie down. Real thing. At bedtime, lads were told to tie their todger to their thigh, like some kind of medieval cock bondage. Why? So if it tried to rise up during a sexy dream, it'd pull so hard, it'd wake you up screaming. Some even wore underpants lined with iron spikes. Yup, proper S&M for saints. One fella in me village said, "If I scratch, I bleed. If I don't, I cry." Then came the chastity cocklock. Imagine this, a tiny metal cage for your John Thomas locked in place. And who kept the key? The priest. That's right. Every time you wanted to get it off, you had to knock on Father Benedict's door and ask nicely, "Mate, I'd rather explode." And let's not forget the food of anti-horniness. They made us eat the blandest, saddest meals ever cooked. Cold porridge, moldy bread, dandelion tea. Apparently spicy food inflamed lust, so they fed us shit that tasted like boiled boredom. I once ate a cabbage so bitter I forgot what tits looked like. But the real genius plan, forced marriage. Yep, The moment you had your first wet dream, they'd marry you off to someone with the same number of teeth as you had goats. That way, you could release pressure legally. Under God's supervision, of course. Love, nah. Consent, never heard of it. Just two terrified teens thrown into a haystack, trying to have divine sex while their in-laws prayed outside. And if all else failed, they just scared us. Said if we touched ourselves, our hands would rot, our spines would twist, and we'd wake up with a demon chewing on our bollocks. Look, I get it. They were trying to stop us from wanking. But Jesus wept. There's a fine line between spiritual guidance and cock torture with iron pants. And you lot today, you've got lotion Wi-Fi and privacy. Us, we had frostbite metal underwear and eternal guilt, just 'cause we got hard in the sheep barn. So next time you stroke the bishop, be grateful. We walked so you could come. What happens if you get caught polishing your pipe? Right. So let's say, despite all the freezing barrels, thorny pants, and cabbage dinners, you went and gave yourself a cheeky tug under the straw blanket. Bad move, brother. Back then, getting caught tugging the turkey was worse than being caught banging your neighbor's goat. At least goat banging meant you had initiative. Masturbation. That meant you were possessed by Satan and too lazy to court a proper woman. And if someone saw you doing it, you didn't just get a slap on the wrist, you got dragged to church like a possessed donkey. First punishment, the confession of shame.
You had to stand up in front of the whole bloody congregation, Mom, Dad, the local baker, even the goat, and say out loud, "I have made myself unclean." Mate, there's no recovery from that. You say that in front of your crush, and suddenly, her dad's arranging her marriage to the village piss boy, just to be safe. Second, the sign of the sin. They'd make you kneel in the middle of church, wearing a big wooden sign that said, "I touched myself," like a bloody billboard for your wank crimes. Every time someone walked past, they'd nod with fake pity and mutter, "There goes the devil's fiddler." Third, public spanking. And not the fun kind. They'd take a bundle of thorny branches or bamboo sticks and whack your hands, the exact hands you sinned with. If your right hand was your weapon of choice, that's the one that got whipped. Some lads switched to their left, just to give their right a break. Fourth, the holy Hunger Games. As if pain and humiliation weren't enough, they also put you on a divine diet. No meat, no wine, and absolutely no jerkin the gherkin for weeks. You were fed like a chicken, with anxiety, dry bread, cold soup, and regret. But oh, it gets better. In some villages, the punishment went full comedy show. They'd shave your head, chuck you into a sackcloth shirt full of holes, and force you to march around town like a shame parade float. Kids threw cabbage. Old women spat blessings. Someone once yelled, "Oi, it's the walking Willie." And one time, true story, a nobleman got caught having a cheeky solo session. His own wife snitched on him. Guess what happened? He got stripped of his title and sent to a monastery. Why? To cleanse his soul through isolation and prayer. Translation: no wine, no women, and definitely no wanking. You think it's rough getting caught by your girlfriend now? Maybe she dumps you. Back then, you got excommunicated, shaved bald, and maybe roasted over a holy bonfire if the bishop was cranky. Wank. Once turn into a demon. Now listen here, lads and lasses, 'cause this bit's where shit gets proper haunted.
See, in the glory days of medieval bollocks, the church didn't just say, "Don't wank." Oh no. They said if you wank, you'll make a fucking demon. Dead serious. Them holy bookworms believed your jizz was basically liquid soul, like actual little spirits swimming about in your bollocks waiting to be born. So if you wasted it on a solo session with your hand and a haystack, you weren't just having a bit of relief. You were murdering souls, unbaptized ones, tiny ghost babies. And what happens to angry ghost babies? That's right, they come back. Some turned into demons that haunted your dreams. Some slipped into your belly and caused diabolical stomach aches. Others, according to one monk who clearly smoked moldy bread, said the spilled seed could grow into goblins in the wheat fields. Imagine that. You go for a cheeky tug behind the barn, and 6 months later, your town's overrun by sexy corn demons with your nose. Absolute madness. And if that weren't enough, the experts of the time, I'm talking bishops, monks, and guys who sniffed candle wax for fun, claimed that masturbation caused blindness, back pain, moods, madness, and your knob turning black and falling off. Fast forward to the bloody 1800s. Yes, the 19th fucking century. And doctors were still shouting, "Cut off the foreskin to stop the devil's urges." You could walk into a clinic with insomnia, and they'd be like, "That's the masturbation demon. Time to snip your hoodie." Me, I once nodded off after a long day of shoveling shit and had a dream about cheese. Next morning, they threw holy water on my bollocks and screamed, "He's been touched by the spunk spirit." No, brother. I was just tired. The lesson of a limp dick bastard. Right time for a sad little bedtime tale from yours truly. I were about 12 summers old, still wet behind the ears, and apparently in my sleepin' trousers. One night, I had this dream about the baker's daughter. Or maybe it were just a loaf of warm rye bread. I can't recall. Point is, I woke up soaked. Not with piss, no lads. The sinful sauce had spilled. Me ma'am lost her fucking mind. She screamed, called me a soul-leaking demon host, and dragged me straight to Father Arswipe, the local exorcist who stank of goat and guilt. They dunked me in a bucket of holy water mixed with freezing river ice and homemade wine. Called it a cleansing ritual. It was just a medieval cocktail of frostbite and trauma. From that day forward, me little Peters never stood up again. That bastard's been on strike ever since, and now look at me. A peasant, childless, passionless. I get more action from a splintery wooden bench than from any woman alive. So let me say this to you, lucky modern wankers, you've got lotion. You've got privacy. You've got bloody Wi-Fi. You can learn about your body without being burned at the stake for spilling seed, without papal permission. Us, we had damp stone walls, angry priests, and a daily fear that a wet dream would land us in a dungeon. So remember, masturbation doesn't kill people. But the people who believed it did damn near killed me. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm off to cry into a dead turnip. Part 4. Sexual disease. Burning, applying resin, wearing a cross. Penis barbecue, the medieval cure for your crabs. Let's get one thing clear, mate. Medieval folks didn't treat dick diseases. They punished them. You think going to a urologist today is awkward?
Try showing your rashy knob to a 12th century healer who ain't bathed since Lent and thinks herpes is Satan squatting in your sack. Ida, your bits itch? He'd grunt, sniffing his fingers. Clearly, God is mad. Now drop your trousers and bend over the goat bucket. These doctors, and I use that term looser than a tavern wench on payday, were less healers and more dick sadists. Behold the medieval penis treatment menu. Side effects include pain trauma and screamin' for your mother while your bollocks turn to charcoal. Let's start light, shall we? Got boils on your cock. They called it demonic seed blisters. The cure. Step 1. Shave your pubes with a rusty sickle. Step 2. Heat up a pot of tar. Yes, bloody road glue. Step 3. Smear it on your twig and berries like it's spa day. And if that don't kill the demons, they say strap on a crucifix. I shit you not. They'd tie a tiny Jesus right above your shaft, hoping holy power would evict whatever dark bastard lived in your urethra. Holy water don't work, they'd say. Try setting it on fire. No joke, mate. Some poor lad in 1342 came in with a burning itch. They thought it was the work of succubi. So the local healer whipped out a candle of prayer and a branding iron shaped like a cross. Boom! Penis BBQ. Can you imagine the scene? A poor farm boy, trousers round his knees, standing in a straw hut, while some beardy bastard chants in Latin, then brands his bell end like it's livestock. And the kicker. When it got worse, because surprise, burning your dick doesn't actually cure anything. They just went, aha, the sin is too deep. Clearly, you've shagged a witch. Boom. Next stop, public execution. One guy got boils, ended up hanged for adultery with a demon. All 'cause his cock got itchy near a harvest. Modern folks whine about wait times at the clinic. Try surviving a blister purge with boiling resin, then come cry to me. And don't even get me started on leech on the knob therapy. That's for next time. So yeah, when your willy got weird, they didn't heal it. They punished it. Because back then, if your dick got sick, it wasn't bacteria. It was the devil tickling your nuts. When your dick became a buck snack. Right, gather round your crusty sacks of regret. Let Uncle Pete tell you how herpes was handled in the good old days. Today they call it herpes simplex. Back then, they called it the devil's handprint on your cock. Romantic, in it you show up with a rash on your todger hoping for ointment and rest. But the local healer just squints at your blisters and goes, ah yes, the lust demon has grabbed your manhood. And what's the cure, you ask? Is it herbs? Is it prayer? Nah, mate, it's a fucking tree sap sauna for your bollocks. They'd grab a pot, throw in some sticky resin from a pine tree, heat that bastard till it bubbles, and then slap it right on your diseased meat flute like barbecue sauce. Burning, screaming, sticking, smoking. And if you screamed, they'd just nod wisely and say ud. That's the sin burning off. The Lord works through fire. Mate, I seen a bloke once tied to a wooden pole, cock out swinging over a campfire like a holy bratwurst. They called it purification of the loins. We called it penis BBQ. Imagine it.
His dick's tied up like a medieval sausage, slow roasting above the coals, while the doctor fans the flames with a psalms scroll. And behind him, some priest humming hymns, holding a Bible in one hand and a fucking ladle of hot goo in the other, saying one more layer, just to be sure. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the scorched scrotum, modern folks cry over spicy lube. Try resin flambe on your dick tip, sweetheart. And don't think this was rare. Nah, the moment your cock so much as twitched funny, they lit a fire. No tests, no diagnosis, no clue what they were doing. Just heat, Jesus, and blind hope. They thought pain meant it was working. You know, like how screaming means the devil's losing. Or how third-degree burns on your bollocks means God has forgiven you for shagging Marjorie behind the barn. Half of them died from infections right after. But hey, at least their souls were clean. So next time you're whining about modern medicine, remember this. At least your doctor ain't dipping your genitals in tree tar and roasting them like medieval marshmallows. The Holy Cross hanging off your dick. Right, so say your dick's not just itching, it's boiling. Full-on fermented lychee syndrome. Pus-filled bumps. Redder than a bishop's arse after Lent. Looks like your cock's trying to grow barnacles and join the Navy. You run to the town's holy dick wizard, hoping for salvation. Maybe a prayer or a salve, right? Nope. He looks down at your festering meat rod and goes, "You've sinned too hard, my son." The Lord is angry at your penis. Then he pulls out a miniature wooden crucifix. Now you're thinking, surely that's for praying, right? Nope, straight on the cock. He ties that sacred lumber to a bit of rough hemp string, then wraps it round the base of your dick like some kind of holy cock ring of divine forgiveness. Dead serious, mate. These poor bastards went walking around with a little cross dangling off their John Thomas like it was Jesus-approved jewelry. Some even carved, "Save me, Lord," into the wood, just in case God forgot where your dick lived. And the best part, they thought the closer the cross to your balls, the faster the healing. So what did they do? Yanked that rope tight as a monk's bum hole. Cut off the blood flow till your todger went blue. The pain is faith leaving the body, they'd say. Faith-powered cock. My arse, you ever seen a grown man weep while trying to pee around a crucifix? I have. And I laughed so hard I shat in my own sandals. They'd walk round the village all serious dick-jangling with divine power like some religious wind chime. And if someone asked what that was, they'd whisper, "I've been touched by God, righty on the shaft." And the priest, oh, he loved it. Blessed are the meek and the mildly infected. He'd sprinkle holy water on the tip while mumbling some Latin that sounded suspiciously like, "Please don't sue." Honestly, if God was watching, he must have been gagging. Gabriel, come look at this shite. They're hanging my son off their cocks. I died for their sins, not their syphilitic schlongs. Moral of the story: if your dick's infected, see a doctor, not a clergyman with twine. The Lord is my doctor, and also why I'm blind. Right? So let's say you've caught syphilis. Yeah, the big one. The OG coochie curse. First it starts with some spicy bumps. Then the fever hits. Next thing you know, your hair's falling out like autumn leaves, and your eyeballs gone. Just vibes. Now in any sane timeline, you'd go see a doctor, right? Wrong. Medieval medicine said, no need for drugs.
Just pray the syphilis away. So these poor sods, blind and bald with pus leaking out of their crotch, they'd crawl into church like, "Forgive me, Father, for I have sinned, and now I pee flames." The priest, instead of helping, just smacks holy water on their forehead, like thy vision goeth dark, but thy soul is lit. But if prayer didn't work, time for plan B. Crack open that skull. No, seriously. They believed syphilis was caused by evil vapors floating around in your brain. So they drilled a hole in your head like they were airing out a fucking teapot. Feeling dizzy? Good. That's the demon flying out. Still not cured. Time to bring out the leeches. But not just anywhere. Nah, they'd stick them on your arse cheeks. 'Cause apparently ass blood was the premium grade juice for evil spirits. To top it off, they'd slap on a blessed garlic ointment straight into your back door, like some medieval Vicks vapor rub for your butthole. And when you scream in agony, half dead and leaking from every hole, the doctor just nods like, "Don't worry, lad. This one's from the Virgin Mary herself." Bro, that's not healing. That's religiously sponsored torture. It was basically Russian roulette, but with more crosses and pus. One guy said, "Well, this won't cure you, but it might scare the devil out by killing you first." Like imagine telling your missus, "Sorry, love, I went blind today, but good news." The bishop rubbed oil on my crack and said, "I'm blessed." Real talk. Being sick in the Middle Ages was like trying to fix your iPhone by shoving it in a Bible and hoping it reboots. No science, no hope, just vibes and vinegar. So next time you think your GP's useless, just remember, at least they don't stick garlic in your ass and say it's a miracle. Gonorrhea. When your dick melts and so does your faith. These days you get gonorrhea. You go to a clinic, get some meds, slap on a cream, done. Back in the day, your cock leaked pus like expired yogurt, and the doctor, bless his medieval soul, grabbed a red-hot iron rod and shoved it straight up your piss hole. Not exaggerating. They called it purification through fire, like roasting a sausage. Except the sausage screams. The patient screaming like a demon giving birth to twins. The priest behind him, calm as hell, muttering, "Burn away his lust, O Lord," and the healer. He's there, heating up the iron like he's making churros, then casually sticking it into someone's meat flute, like it's a holy quest. Imagine it. One guy screaming in Latin and piss another guy holding his legs down, and the third one trying to aim true like it's an Olympic sport. All while the priest sprinkles holy water like it'll somehow keep the dick from catching on fire. No anesthetic, no antibiotics, no common sense. Just faith fire and full-blown trauma. Some poor sods ended up with their dicks bent like a shepherd's crook. They'd ask, "Is it cured?" And the doc would say, "No more puss, praise God." The shape, that's divine will. And the smell, Christ. Burnt flesh, boiled piss, and the faint scent of shame. Even Satan would have said, "That's a bit much." Some dudes passed out from the pain. Others screamed so hard they shat themselves. One even tried to jump into a well just to cool his cock off. Villagers would come watch like it's entertainment. "Ooh, look, it sizzled. Say a prayer for his tiny sausage." And the worst part, you had to pay for this torture. Pay real money to have your genitals exercised with a branding iron. So yeah, getting gonorrhea in medieval times didn't just melt your dick. It melted your soul, your dignity, and your will to live. The grand finale. You didn't die from disease. You died from the cure. These days, you catch an STD, you go to a clinic. Doctor looks at your junk, says, "Take these pills, get some rest, you'll be fine." Back then, you show up with a rash on your bollocks and they go full exorcism on your knob. Boiling tar, holy fire, metal rods, dog bone crucifixes. You didn't die from the disease. You died from the fucking treatment. I mean, seriously. They treated your cock like it committed a crime against God. Not a patient, but a penis possessed by Satan himself. And don't get me wrong, STDs weren't great. Still aren't. But back then, the real danger wasn't herpes. It was some toothless bastard with a Bible in one hand and a red-hot poker in the other. Medicine. Nah. It was dick punishment with extra steps. You go in hoping for healing and leave with your junk looking like burnt bacon and your faith in Christ roasted to ash. Modern medicine saves lives. Medieval medicine just made sure your last erection came with screaming and hymns. A poor bastard's cock on fire, a tiny wooden crucifix tied to it as the healer pours oil on the flames and sings a cheery church hymn like it's Christmas Eve. Blessed be the balls, for they have suffered for our sins. Part 5. Sex toys, ikutus, pig guts, wood, and dried poop. Meet Betsy, the goat pouch sex doll. You lot these days have got 7-speed vibrators, glow-in-the-dark rubber thingies, and apps to sync your orgasms to bloody techno music. Back in my day, my cousin Reg made himself a sex doll out of a dried goat's stomach. Swear on me, piss bucket. Called her Betsy. Said she was a bit gamey but loyal. Now, Reg weren't the brightest turnip in the field. Didn't clean Betsy out after use. Just tied her up and shoved her under the bed. Problem is, goat stomachs don't exactly breathe. Gas builds up. So one day during Lent, yes, the holiest of times, Betsy exploded like Satan's whoopee cushion. Bits of goat and regret all over the floor. We buried her behind the pigsty. Reg wore black for a week. Still lights a candle for her every Shrove Tuesday. Nowadays, you've got fancy silicone gadgets, rechargeable USB-friendly silent mode. You keep yours in a velvet pouch. Reg kept his in a sack of turnips. You moisturize yours. His was crunchy. And here's the kicker, we didn't just worry about performance, we worried it'd blow our bollocks off. So while you're out here with your rose gold suction vibes and Bluetooth bonking, remember us poor souls who had to romance dead animal guts and pray they didn't rupture mid-thrust. Call it medieval love baby, or just trauma with extra steps. Right. So here's the holy joke of it all. The church back then was proper obsessed with telling people when, how, and why to shag. And the answer was always, don't, unless you're married. And even then, only in the dark. Facing Jerusalem, on a Wednesday, while thinking about Christ dying. So what happens when you tell an entire village full of horny peasants they can't touch their bits? They get creative, mate. See, the church banned sex toys too. Called them instruments of the devil's poking. Said if you used one, your soul would slip out your bum and go straight to hell. But all that did was make people horny and imaginative. So what did they use? Well, let's start with the classics. Pig intestines. Wash 'em, dry 'em, twist 'em, boom. You got yourself a medieval fleshlight. Goat stomachs, as seen in the tragic tale of Betsy.
fish bladders, slimy, stretchy, smelled like the devil's armpit. But hey, it got the job done. Wood. Yeah, literal carved wood. Nothing says pleasure like splinters in your cooch. Animal hide, beeswax, clay, wet bread turnips. Basically, if it could hold a shape and wasn't currently screaming, someone probably shagged it. One time, our village priest father, Gutbert, caught a lad right after baptism fiddling about with what he called his miracle meat tube. Said God gave him the vision to whittle it from holy oak under a full moon. Father burned it in the altar fire. Smelled like sausages. We weren't perverts. We were craftsmen. There was this one farmer, Old Ned, who made a dildo from hardened cowhide, bent it into a curve, stitched it with gut string, and named it the Holy Pokey. He said it helped his missus see angels. Another bloke used sculpted clay. Problem was, it cracked mid-thrust and left pottery shards in his privates. He claimed it was divine punishment. I reckon it was just bad engineering. But that was life in it. We couldn't buy pleasure, so we built it. Sex was banned, toys were banned, even thinking was risky. But desire don't give a toss about doctrine. So while the church waved crosses and shouted about purity, we were out back boiling pig guts and carving wood dicks. We didn't sin quietly. We sinned with style. Wooden dildos and splinters of doom. Now I know what you're thinking. Pete, surely wood ain't the best material to shove into your nethers. Correct. Bloody dangerous it was. But back then we didn't have silicone or Amazon Prime. If you wanted a willy and didn't have a man attached to it, you had to carve the bastard yourself. So folks made 'em out of wood. And not fancy carved art. No. I'm talking rough-as-hell broom handle rejects. Straight stiff, no mercy. Sometimes even with the bark still on. Real rustic vibes. And let me tell you, if your lover didn't give you wood, you gave it to yourself. Literally. But here's the kicker. No one sanded them proper. So these medieval joysticks had more splinters than a beaver's toilet. You didn't get orgasms, you got open wounds. There's a famous tale round our parts. Lady Gwyneth of Twatcher, a noble woman rich as sin, pretty as a painting, decided one night she was too bored and too unmarried. So her handmaid whittled her a wooden willy, painted it pink, wrapped it in rabbit fur. Fancy. But guess what? The bloody thing splintered halfway through her solo crusade. She got an infection so fierce, her entire down there turned purple and puffed like a poisoned pufferfish. She died a week later. They buried her with the dildo. True story. I saw the grave. It read, "Taken by pleasure, slain by pine." Now, if that ain't poetic, I don't know what is. But hey, not everyone was unlucky. There was this girl, Elspeth. Smartest lass I ever met. She glued goat hair to the tip of her wooden dong for realism. Said the tickling helped her reach the gates of heaven. We all called it the horny satyr. She lent it out too. Proper village legend. Me uncle tried to copy the design, used horsehair instead. Ended up sneezing mid-thrust and poked himself in the eye. 2 months wearing an eye patch. Claimed it was a jousting accident. Lying sod. And me, I once opened an old wooden box in a barn. Thought it had tools inside. Turns out, it was tools. Just not the carpentry kind. At least 15 hand-carved ding-dongs, all sizes and finishes. Some even had names scratched into them. The Almighty Poker, Sir Stabalot, Saint Dicolas. I nearly pissed myself laughing. Thing is, when you ban pleasure, you don't kill it. You just make it weirder, sharper, and occasionally made of oak. The goat guts pocket pussies. Right? You thought wooden dicks was the end of it. Nah. Strap in, lads and lasses, 'cause next up the medieval fleshlight. Now, imagine you're a lonely farmhand. It's winter, your bollocks are heavier than your debts, and there ain't a woman within 10 muddy miles. What do? Simple. You grab a goat. Not for that, you pervert, just the intestines. I'm talking animal guts turned into shaggin' sleeves. We called 'em goat guts pocket pussies. Well, we didn't have a name for 'em then, but we sure used 'em. How to make one? Let me educate yer. First, you get the small intestine or stomach of a goat, pig, or sheep, freshly removed, still steamin'. Next, you wash it, hopefully. Some didn't. Bloody heathens. Then you fill it with ash, a bit of dry straw, and if you were feeling fancy, a splash of piss. Keeps it warm. It's like a ye old microwave, right? Tie one end lube, the other with goose fat or old butter, and boom, you've got a portable hole of holiness. Reusable too, if you didn't mind maggots. Me older brother, Smelly Tom, swore by his goat guts girl. Carried it around in a sack like it were a prized relic. One day, he used a bad batch. Didn't clean it proper. The thing was riddled with rot. He gave it a good thrust, and by dawn next day, his willy looked like a black banana left in the sun. Doctor said God's punishing you. Tom said God can fuck off, that goat was worth it. 3 days later, half his knob fell off. We called him 1-inch Tom after that. R.I.P. his pride. Now look, this might sound funny now, and it bloody is, but for poor bastards like us, these gut pouches were the only companions we had. No wife, no brothel, money, no warm arms, just a cold, slippery tube of former goat and maybe a tear or two. Some fellas even named theirs. I knew a guy who called his lady Eleanor. He'd light a candle, whisper sweet nothings, and pump away like he were married. It's tragic, but also peak innovation. See, the church said sex outside marriage was a sin. So what did peasants do? They shagged livestock leftovers and hoped for forgiveness. It was either that or join a monastery. And let's be honest, no one wants to give up ale and wanking. Poop lubes and burning holes. Now let's talk about lube. You see, in modern times, you lot have got fancy bottles of water-based silicone, tingly, cooling, strawberry-flavored unicorn jizz or whatever. But in the Middle Ages, we had nothing except desperation and whatever we could scoop up from a barnyard. Poor folk lubes, oh mate, sheep fat, spit, mashed up dry turds. I shit you not, literally. Some clever donkey bonker figured if you dry goat poo in the sun, crush it fine and mix it with saliva or old mutton grease, it makes a smooth paste. That's not a love potion. That's a bloody biohazard. One lad near our village tried peanut paste and fireplace ash. Don't ask where he got peanuts, probably stole them from a monk. He said it gave him a hot tingling. By morning, he had no pubes left. Poor sod looked like a hairless mole with third-degree burns. Now, don't think it stopped there. Medieval minds were too creative for their own bollocks. Some used fish oil straight from the guts, beeswax softened over a candle, syrup mixed with moss, sweet and sticky like a cursed dessert. One baker's apprentice once tried honey and chicken fat, thought he'd invented the future, until the ants came. He woke up covered in bites, screaming, Willie stuck to the bedsheet like it owed him rent. And then, oh Christ, there's lamp oil. Yep, one village genius mistook a jar of olive oil used for lighting lanterns. He slathered it on his meat stick, lit a candle nearby, and whoosh up it went, like a torch at the Crusades. He came running out the hot pants around his ankles, bollocks on fire, shouting, "The devil's in me cock." Now, we all laughed after we pissed on him to put it out. To this day, we call him Flame Rod Hugh. Thing is, church told us sex was sacred, but gave zero advice for when your bits start chafing. So we had to improvise. We weren't sinners. We were chemists with boners. But don't get it twisted. Behind all the goat grease and flaming penises was real loneliness. No money for brothels, no wives, no comfort. Just cold huts, stinky rags, and desperate thrusts in the dark. We made love with beeswax and hope. And sometimes, burning regret. Sex toys from the blacksmith's forge. Right now, if you were a bit richer back in them days, like had 3 chickens and a full set of teeth, you could afford something fancier than sheep grease and owl feathers. I'm talking about sex toys forged by the bloody blacksmith, While he's making horseshoes and swords, your posh neighbors would be like, "Oi, Jeffrey, while you're at it, make me wife a metal cock, will ya, iron peckers with engraved handles, bronze buzz rings that rattled when you walked, spinning lead balls on chains, basically medieval Benoit balls, but heavier than guilt on confession day." One lord's daughter had a whole drawer full of them, called it her holy arsenal, said it kept her closer to God than marriage ever did. Now, don't get excited. These weren't smooth silicone bits like in your modern drawer of battery-powered sin. These were raw, hammered metal rods made by a man who also fixed wagon wheels. No polish, no safety, just pain and penetration. And let me tell you, using a cold iron dildo in winter, it's like sticking your nipples to a frozen fence post. I once saw Lady Gertrude run out screaming, "Me fanny's frozen shut." Took 3 midwives and a mug of mead to thaw her open. Then there's the other side of madness, that one lass out in the village, right frisky type, tried to preheat her toy by chucking it in the forge for a few seconds. Bad fucking idea. Shoved it in while it was still red hot and came out screaming, smoking, and half-cooked. The local barber surgeon said it was a stage 3 vulvic roast. We all just called it the devil's tandoori. Her husband tried to sue the blacksmith for creating a weapon of ass destruction. The priest blamed lust demons. I just sold the story to a traveling bard. And you know what's worst? Despite all that, they still kept ordering more. Bronze rings, twisted plugs, even nun-approved chastity ticklers. Why? 'Cause the church told them they couldn't touch themselves, couldn't touch each other, couldn't even look at goats the wrong way. But it said nothing about machinery. So folks just adapted. If they couldn't sin the regular way, they went and invented sins made of metal. Bloody hell, mate. The things we'll do when we're horny, cold, and stuck in a world with no Netflix. Forbidden fruits and veggie vices. Let me tell you, back in them dark ages when your hole's hungry and your wallet's empty, you don't go looking for fancy broads or gold-plated dildos. You raid the bloody vegetable patch. Yep, the common folk, us dirt-sniffing, turnip-licking peasants, we made do with what the Lord put in the soil. And guess what? That included cucumbers, carrots, eggplants, parsnips, radishes, anything vaguely dick-shaped or slightly girthy. You ever looked at a fresh, thick zucchini and thought, no. Well, the peasants of 1262 sure did. But see, not all fruits of the earth were blessed by God's mercy. You ever heard of veggie betrayal? Because let me tell you, more than one peasant ended up in the afterlife with a cucumber still lodged in their backside. One time, this old widow named Maud God, rest her stretched-out soul, got a bit too frisky with a turnip the size of a newborn's head. Problem was, she'd rubbed the damn thing down with what she thought was honey, but it turned out to be medieval bug repellent. Some arse-burning concoction of vinegar and pig piss. She went blind in one eye from the fumes, and the village priest had to yank the veggie out with the tongs from the incense bowl. And don't get me started on the great carrot incident of Blister Hill. Old man Giles, bless his pervy heart, had a thing for fresh produce. One day, he got cocky-tried to double up with 2 carrots and a bottle of sheep milk for lube. Well, the carrots snapped, got stuck sideways. The poor bastard waddled to the apothecary looking like he'd just lost a joust with a fence post. Took the local healer, who was really just a drunk with a strong stomach, 3 hours, and a set of blacksmith's pliers to get it out. Rumor has it the carrots came out pickled, and you'd think the church would have said something, "Thou shalt not shag thine vegetables," or whatever, but nah. As long as it didn't look like you were enjoying it too much, they turned a blind eye. Because pleasure. That was the real sin, not the eggplant in your arse. No, that was just poverty innovation. So next time you see a lonely cucumber at the market, just know, in the right hands and the wrong century, it might have been someone's secret Friday night companion. Medieval times where food wasn't just survival, it was personal exploration, love and loneliness in the Middle Ages. Now look, I can cuss about turnips up the bum and burning iron dicks all day. But let me pull back the curtain a bit, all right? Just for a moment. Because beneath all the filth and freaky behind every vegetable used unholy, there's somewhat even heavier loneliness. You see, life back then weren't just dirty. It was empty. Long winters, cold beds, a plague that wiped out half your family, and the church telling you can't even hug someone too long 'cause it might awaken the flesh. Well, bollocks to that. Sex toys back in the day, they weren't just for pleasure. They were bloody grief sculptures, tools to cope. When no one was touching you, when love was either dead or forbidden, some poor bastard would carve a wooden knob just to remember what warmth felt like. Ain't that tragic? There was this one bloke in our village, old Wilrick. Used to be a tailor before his hands shook too much to stitch. Lost his missus to the pox. Loved her like knights love swords. Couldn't move on. One day I seen him down by the river collecting lamb's wool and bits of cloth like a magpie on heat. Thought he'd gone cracked. Turns out he was sewing himself a woman, a doll. He used the hem of his wife's old dress for the body, stuffed it with straw and wool, and the part that made me want to cry into my ale. He stitched her hair, her real hair, into the scalp, from an old hairbrush he kept. He whispered to her at night like she never left. Call it mad. But I'll tell you, that bloke had more love in him than every bishop this side of Rome. They called him crazy. I called him human. He'd sit under the stars, holding his fabric wife, humming lullabies to no one. Said it made him feel like the world hadn't ended. Said, I know she's not warm, but at least I ain't cold. So yeah, we laugh at the iron dicks and radish fetishes, but behind every crude toy was someone trying not to lose their bloody mind. Trying to feel seen, touched, held, even if it was just by wood and wool and memory. And to the priests who spat on us for seeking love in the dark, who wagged fingers while they shagged choir boys in confessionals, you ain't better than Wilrick and his thread-stitched misses. You're just lonelier, and you don't even know it. So here's to the broken hearts of the Black Death years, the widows with turnips and the old men with dolls, the freaks who weren't freaks. They were just lonely and alive. Even in the shittiest of times, someone still tried to feel loved. And that, my friends, is the most human thing we ever did. I gather round now, ye filthy lot, 'cause old Shitty Pete has said his piece about dildos devils and the depraved dance between guilt and pleasure. But before I piss off into the sunset, like a fart in the wind, let me leave you with this last crusty truth, you lot today, with your smooth-ass, silicone, vibrating wands, AI sex robots that talk dirty in 10 languages. Don't get me wrong, it's impressive. But we, the poor bastards of the Middle Ages, we didn't have no pink plastic paradise. We had splinters, soot, goat grease, and shame. But you know all what? We made it bloody work. Because when you ain't got comfort, you learn to worship the tremble. You make magic out of misery. A carved bit of driftwood meant the world when your bed was cold, and your priest told you love was a sin. Every whimper we stole was a rebellion. Every moan behind a barn door was a little middle finger to the heavens. So laugh at us all you like. Say we were primitive, disgusting, horny lunatics, humping turnips and burning our bits off with spice oil. And you'd be bloody right. But we knew how to feel, how to want, how to make a whole forest groan with just a candle and a dirty thought. And that, my modern wankers, is something your waterproof USB-charged dildo will never teach you. So remember this the next time you crawl under your covers with your fancy latex lover. If it jiggles, squeaks, burns, or bites, trust me, we bloody tried it. Part 6. Adultery Laws. Death for her, high five for him. A bald woman tied to a post with a cowbell hanging from her neck, dragged around the village like a possessed animal. Villagers cheer like it's the World Cup final. Her husband, sitting in the crowd cuddling 2 slave girls like he just won the lottery. Oi oi, gather round, you randy little sinners. Today we're talking about cheatin'. Not the kind where you peek at your mate's quiz, nah. The kind where your genitals forget who they're married to. Now listen, back in the good old Middle Ages, if a woman cheated on her husband, even just a little kissy, behind the barn, bam, public shaming parade crown her bald. Hang a cowbell on her like she's the village mascot. Tie her to a stick and drag her round town like, look, everyone. This one felt horny. And the townsfolk, they clapped like seals. Kids tossed vegetables. Priests whispered amen and probably got a boner.
Meanwhile, her hubby loungin' nearby with his tits deep in slave girl's grin on his mug like he just scored free ale. Why, oh, I slipped and fell right into the maid's vagina. That's not adultery, mate. That's God's will. So next time you get ghosted on Tinder, don't whine. At least you're not bald wearing a cowbell and apologizing to a crowd of cabbage throwers. Middle Ages, baby. Where double standards weren't just normal, they were church-approved. Laws only apply to women. Men can trip into tits. Now here's the bloody thing, right? Back in the day, if a woman even looked at another man funny, bam, whole village drags her out like a cow that farted in church. They'd shave her head clean like a turnip, slap a cowbell on her neck, tie her to a stick, and march her round the village like she's on some medieval Tinder walk of shame. Except instead of swiping, folks are throwing cabbage and yelling, "Whore shame, moo." Meanwhile, guess where her husband is, sitting front row with two plump maids on his lap, laughing like he's watching the circus. One hand on a goblet, one hand on a titty, and not his wife's titty, mind you. Now, here comes the good part. If someone caught him sticking his sausage where it don't belong, say inside the kitchen maid, he'd just shrug and go, "Oh no, I tripped," and fell right between her bosoms and the priest, the judge, the town elder. They'd all nod like it's totally logical. Ah yes, gravity is truly a sinful temptress. Let us pray he doesn't fall into any more breasts. Like bro, be so for real. Sometimes they'd spice it up and say, "I was weak. The devil made me horny." And that somehow made it okay. No bell, no shame walk, no cabbage to the head. Just a pat on the back, and maybe a new maid to supervise. But the wife? She could be locked in the house for weeks, sleeping on straw, next to the family goat, praying she don't get accused of being a witch next. The laws back then, they were like a pub toilet door. Only swings one way. If you've got tits, you get punished. If you've got balls, you get excuses. And it's not like they even tried to hide it. You know what the church said? Men are naturally weak to temptation. Women must be strong and pure to protect them. Protect them from what? Slippery nipples. It's like if you caught a bloke stealing bread, and instead of jail, the judge says, "Oh, poor dear. The bread tempted him. Let's give him butter next time. And if the wife dares complain..." Silence, woman. You should have kept his loins satisfied. Mate, it was gaslight. Gatekeep gallows. So yeah, moral of the story. If you were a woman in the Middle Ages, the only thing worse than cheatin' was being married to a man who did it better. From confession to torture session. Now listen here, lads and lasses. Don't think cheating was the only thing that got women dragged to church like they'd pissed in the holy water. Oh no, some wives, and I swear on me crusty sandals, got punished just for saying "not tonight" to their own husbands. Yep, you could be a loyal, pious, kneel and pray every day kind of woman. But if you dared to not open your legs right after Sunday Mass, boom. Straight to hell. Or worse, straight to the priest for a spiritual spanking. Not shagging your husband after receiving the holy bread was considered disrespecting the body of Christ. Bruv. Be fucking for real. Like, imagine this.
You just got back from church, stomach full of stale wafers and dry wine, feeling a bit bloated, maybe even cramping. And your sweaty, hairy husband, who smells like goat and shame, climbs into bed like wife. It is the sacred hour of holy bonking present thyself for spiritual intercourse.
And if you say, "I'm not feeling well," or even, "Can we cuddle instead?" the next thing you know, he's at the confessional booth, crying like a theater kid. "Father, my wife hath rejected my blessed rod." Then, boom! You're hauled before the bishop like you just slapped Jesus in the face with a fish. And what does the church say? "Wife, you have denied your God-given duty. You must cleanse your soul with repentance and pelvic obedience." Excuse me, sir, what now? And don't even think about faking sleep. If you snored wrong after Mass, they'd say it was the devil trying to silence the holy. D1, poor lass? I remember her name was Marjorie. Missed Sunday service with her husband for 2 weeks, 'cause she had a fever. Guess what they told her? Clearly you are possessed. Or worse, you're enjoying the sin of self-pleasure. So they dragged her into public penance, made her wear a sack and yelled, "Confess thy demon-clenching vagina." Mate, all she did was try to nap. It's wild. You could be the Virgin Mary herself, but if you didn't spread 'em like communion wafers every Sabbath night, you'd be labeled a heretic with a rusty womb. Ain't that some holy bollocks? Modern cheating gets you blocked. Back then, you got beheaded, right? Listen up, you sexy little sinners. Nowadays, you cheat on your partner, and what happens? You get roasted on Instagram stories. Your name shows up in some spicy Zalo group chat. Maybe your ex posts a sad black and white photo with some Lana Del Rey lyrics, and everyone's like, "OMG, he was the villain all along." Big deal. Back in my day, you looked at another man too long. Just looked, and boom, straight to the fucking stake. Wrapped in holy bed sheets, doused in oil, set ablaze like a cursed sausage roll. And the crowd, oh, they loved it. They'd sip watered-down wine and cheer like it's the medieval World Cup. "Burn her!" She winked at the blacksmith. I swear on me arsehair. There was this bloke in my village, Sir Rupert the soft-faced, real insecure type. Beard like a patchy potato, but proud as a pope. One night he walks into the church wailing, "Father, my wife." She had a dream where another man tickled her feet, and the priest didn't even blink. Just nodded like, "That's spiritual adultery, my son." She's clearly been seduced by Satan's sandal sniffer. Next thing you know, poor Lady Beatrice is locked in a cell with rats and a Bible, forced to fast, confess, and eat nothing but guilt for 2 weeks. Over a bloody dream. A dream mate. And if a woman so much as smiled at a traveling bard, oh ho ho, that smile, that's witchcraft with a hint of lust. Burn her before she seduces the sheep. Compare that to today. You cheat, and you just get unfollowed. Unfollowed. Maybe you lose a few followers, maybe your DMs go quiet. Boo fucking who. In 1347, you lost your head. Literally. It rolled off into a basket while the bishop read from the Horny Sins handbook. Oh, she liked a shirtless knight's painting on the castle wall. Clearly, she's a danger to the kingdom. Mate, we didn't have likes. We had whips. You don't just get caught. You get condemned, confessed, tortured.
and maybe, if you're lucky, forgiven after they pull 3 of your teeth and half your soul out. So next time you see someone crying 'cause their ex posted a thirst trap, just remind them, at least you still have your nipples. Marjorie the Lusty lost both for accidentally moaning in her sleep. Modern heartbreaks got nothing on medieval foreplay, I tell ya. Medieval love, when losing a crush, means losing your life. These days, young folks go on TikTok and cry about breakups like it's the end of the bloody world. He left me on red. She unmatched me after 2 dates. Boo fucking who. Back in my day, love hurt. And I don't mean emotionally, I mean it physically, like full-blown public-shaming, church-sanctioned, crowd-pleasing beatdowns with bonus firewood. You get ghosted now. We got exorcised. I seen a girl get tied to a pole just for holding hands with a stable boy. Stable, not even noble. She didn't even get dick, just fingers, and a giggle, and boom, she's hanging there with a sign around her neck. Jezebel in training. They made her wear a cowbell and everything. Ding fucking dong, the slut is coming through. And the worst bit, her husband was probably balls deep in 2 nuns and a goat. But guess what? Nobody cared. He's a man, and men have needs, they'd say. I swear the church was just one big medieval bro podcast. Nowadays, if a girl cheats, she loses followers, maybe gets roasted in a group chat. Big deal. Back then, you could lose your bloody head, or worse, get sent to a nunnery. You ever been in a room with 30 women who ain't had an orgasm in 15 years and still believe elbows are sexy? That's hell with better lighting. And don't get me started on sex schedules. A woman could be dying of the plague and the priest would still go, "You must fulfill your marital duties after Sunday Mass, or Satan wins." Like Satan sitting there with a clipboard rating missionary positions. People today got dating apps. You swipe, you flirt, you ghost, you move on. Us. We had arranged marriages and the occasional glimpse of a tit at the fish market if you were lucky. Love wasn't romantic. It was like jury duty with more livestock. So every time I hear some lad complain that his girlfriend didn't reply for 6 hours, or that some girl whines about her situationship being emotionally unavailable, I just want to chuck a cowbell at their head and shout, "You ungrateful twats!" You know what we would have given for consensual, freely chosen, cowbell-free sex. Everything. A field, a donkey, even me, last piece of dried sausage. So yeah, modern love sucks sometimes. But you've got rights, you've got choices. You've got the ability to text "you up" at 2 a.m. without asking your local bishop for permission. And if it goes wrong, you lose an iPhone, not a head. That sound, that's not shame anymore. That's freedom echoing through history. Now go love somebody. Or don't. Just don't be a prick about it. And for the love of all things holy, stop texting your ex. Part 7. Clit Cutting for Christ. Now listen here, you filthy little sinners. Today we ain't talking about tits or boils on ball sacks or monks snorting incense for erections. Nah. Today we talk about the one thing that made the entire church shiver harder than a virgin in a snowstorm. The female orgasm. You heard me right. See, back in the Middle Ages, when medicine was just astrology with knives and priests thought sneezing was Satan knocking. The church had this brilliant idea. If it feels good, God hates it. And nothing made 'em froth at the mouth more than the idea of a woman enjoying herself in bed. A man could fuck a cabbage and get forgiven with 3 Hail Marys. But a woman moaning, a woman smiling when she finishes, oh, that's the devil stretching her soul open from the inside, brother. And thus began one of the most fucking barbaric chapters in holy history, the crusade against the clit. The demon lives in the crotch. Now I know what you're thinking. Pete, surely they didn't go snipping up ladies' bits just for smiling too loud in bed. Oh, they did. And it started with this one mad bastard monk in the 9th century who wrote the devil resides in the little nub of flesh above a woman's channel. It tickles her towards sin. Tickles her towards sin, he said. Like the clit was a joy buzzer from Satan's toy box. So what did the church do? Medical research, female-led theology. Nope, they called in the scissors. Not your everyday sewing scissors, mind you. We're talking rusty iron shears heated in fire like they were sterilizing shame. The goal, remove the seat of lust. Burn it, slice it, choke it with holy water. Anything to stop women from, feeling human. The holy haters of horny girls. I remembered the tale of Sister Agnes the Tender, a nun in training who dared to say out loud one night, "I feel warmth between my thighs when I pray." Boom! That's it. Trial testimony and snip, snip. They dragged her to the cloister's dark chamber, put her on a cold stone table, and cut out her sinful center. No anesthetic, no apology, just a monk mumbling Latin and a wet sponge in her mouth to keep her from biting off her tongue. The church called it mortification of the flesh for the salvation of the soul. We called it slicing the spice out of life. And guess what? They didn't just do it to nuns. Oh no. If you were a peasant girl who giggled too much or walked with a confident sway, or God forbid, masturbated, they'd come for you too. One poor lass in our village, young Molly, the miller's daughter, got caught using a polished carrot in the barn. A priest found it while snooping and screamed, "The root of evil is in her root cellar." Next day she had no clit and no carrots. Tragic. Herpes burn it with holy fire. In today's world, if you have herpes, the doctor might give you pills and a lecture about safe sex. In medieval times, they gave you fire. Pete says, back then, if you had sores down there, the village doctor would say, "Ah, yes, clearly the devil lives in your underpants." Solution shave. Everything and slap on boiling tar like you're seasoning a steak. If that didn't help, they'd hang a cross right on your groin, because maybe Jesus would chase the virus out. They called it penis BBQ. It was less about healing and more about roasting the sin away. People didn't die from herpes. They died from the treatment. Illustration idea. A man screaming as smoke rises from his crotch, while a happy monk waves a burning stick and says, "Be healed, my son." Syphilis. Pray harder. Even if you're blind, syphilis in the Middle Ages was a bit like a horror movie. It started with strange rashes. Then your hair fell out. Your eyes went blind. And eventually, your brain melted. But medicine? Nah. Pete says instead of antibiotics, they offered prayers. If you got worse, they'd cut open your scalp and let leeches suck the bad blood. Then they'd slap a magic charm on your butt and hope for the best. Doctors didn't study medicine. They played religious roulette. This treatment might not save your soul, but hey, it'll keep you busy while you go insane.
Illustration: a crying patient with garlic paste on their behind while the healer proudly says, "Holy ointment approved by Saint Mary Gonorrhea. Just add fire." Gonorrhea was common, gross, and painful. The discharge sticky like spoiled yogurt. Pete explains doctors didn't bother with mercy. They'd heat a metal rod till it glowed red, then jab it straight up your urethra. "It'll burn away the sin," they said, more like it burned away your will to live. The patient, screaming, crying, praying, not for healing, but for unconsciousness. Behind them, a priest said a blessing, just in case hell was watching. Illustration idea: a guy tied to a table healer, holding a hot iron with tongs, and the priest cheering, "Repent with your loins," not dying from disease, dying from treatment. Modern STI treatment. Doctor says, "Take these pills, drink water." Old days. Pete laughs. "You had a rash. They poured tar on your genitals, a bit itchy. They used burning oil. And the most common advice, wear a cross near your junk. It'll keep demons out." So you didn't die of the virus. You died of people trying to cure you with boiling plants and religious panic. Pete sighs. In those times, sexual diseases weren't the real danger. The real threat was the idiot with the scalpel and a Bible. Illustration: a man with his privates on fire healer pouring hot oil while singing a hymn. Clitoris cutting for moral purity. This part gets darker. Pete whispers, in some places, they believed female pleasure was sinful. So if a girl laughed too loudly or sneezed during her period, people said, "The devil is in her." Solution: cut out her clitoris. No anesthesia, no understanding, just fear disguised as faith. One nun even said, "If it hurts, rejoice. God is testing your soul." Pete mutters, "My friend sneezed once too loud. They thought it was Satan's trumpet. She didn't survive." Illustration: a young girl crying, surrounded by nuns holding sharp tools. The caption, "Faith-based surgery. Masturbation equals eternal damnation." Ah, the old enemy of the church, your own hand. Pete grins. Back then, touching yourself was the fastest way to hell. Priests warned boys, every drop spilled is a soul lost. One even said, angels cry every time you know. To stop it, they made kids wear metal gloves at night, tied their hands to the bed, or made them confess every single touch, while a monk took notes. Some boys were even forced to wear spiked belts so they'd remember God every time their pants moved. Illustration: a teenage boy crying while a monk yells, "Shame," and tightens his iron chastity belt. Sex education, just scream Satan. No one explained anything. Pete says, "You got your first wet dream. They said you were possessed. You touched a girl's hand, straight to confession. Nobody taught you how bodies worked. They just yelled and threw crosses. So kids grew up thinking armpit hair meant you were cursed, and kissing could summon demons. One boy got exorcised because he hugged a goat. Just a goat. Pete swears it." Illustration: a terrified boy being sprinkled with holy water while a goat munches grass peacefully in the corner. Sex equals sin equals punishment. In medieval logic, if you had sex and got sick, it was proof you deserved it.
Pete wraps up. Nowadays, you get tested. You take pills, you move on. Back then, they blamed you, tortured you, and then gave you a funeral in a ditch. Worst part, the people hurting you thought they were saving you, with fire knives and holy chants. Pete sighs. Sex didn't kill you. Fear and ignorance did. You just wanted love, and they gave you boiling tar and a priest with poor aim. Illustration. A crowd watching a man tied to a pole, flames rising, while a friar shouts, "Let this lust burn away." Part 8. The Soul-Sucking Uterus Theory. All right, gather around, you horny little time travelers. Today's tale is about the one thing scarier to medieval men than taxes, demons, or wiping their ass with hay. The female uterus. He leans in like he's telling you a dirty secret. Back in the good old stupid days, people actually believed that every time a woman had sex, she absorbed a bit of the man's soul, straight into her womb. Sleep with one man. Fine. Sleep with 3. Boom. Your womb becomes a goddamn USB drive from a sketchy internet cafe, full of corrupted male souls, unwanted updates, and probably some emotional malware. Some folks even believed if a woman banged too many dudes, her baby would come out with goat horns and chicken feet. No joke. Like her uterus was some dark cauldron mixing up demon soup. He pauses. Modern girls worry about exes texting at 2 a.m. Medieval girls worried about giving birth to a fucking goat baby because Chad didn't pull out. So yeah, welcome to Part 5, the soul-sucking uterus, where vaginas are haunted, babies are cursed, and logic is on vacation. The sex math of mutant babies. All right, listen close. Medieval folks didn't know jack about sperm DNA or baby-making science, but that didn't stop them from inventing some batshit math formulas to explain pregnancy. He squats on a rock, drawing in the dirt with a stick. Here's the logic. 1 woman plus 1 man equals 1 baby, normal. Yeah, but if the same woman sleeps with 3 men, 1 woman plus 3 men equals goat. Baby with chicken legs. Simple medieval math. No calculators, just pure panic. Cut to a dramatic image, a baby coming out screaming with a goat head, chicken feet, and glowing red eyes. Midwives run for their lives. 1 faints. Another jumps out a window. Meanwhile, the baby's just hungry and buying like a confused sheep. They actually believed the womb mixed together every soul a woman ever slept with, like a meat grinder or a cursed smoothie blender. He shivers. If she banged a nobleman, a farmer, and a guy who smells like cheese, congrats. The baby's got royal hair, potato teeth, and eternal armpit odor. He glares at the camera. And if the kid turned out weird, they didn't blame genetics. Nah, they blamed sin math. Too many sausages in the spiritual stew. Oh my God, her child has a lazy eye and likes music. It's Satan's grandbaby. He points at an imaginary woman. And God help you if you laughed while giving birth. One lady just giggled during labor, and the village burned her alive. They thought she was summoning demons with her laugh. Like, he, hellspawn, a poor midwife smiling softly while helping with a birth. Villagers burst in with torches like she laughed. Burn the bitch. Today, women get epidurals. Back then, they got barbecued. He leans in dramatic whisper, the uterus wasn't just a baby oven, it was a crime scene. And every penis she met was evidence. So yeah, welcome to medieval sex math.
where sleeping with two guys could get your kid banned from the village for having demonic toenails. The real reason men loved this bullshit. Now look, I ain't saying blokes back then were clever, but when it came to avoiding responsibility, bloody hell, they were genius-level philosophers. He leans in whispering like it's a juicy secret. See, this whole womb collect souls theory wasn't just some church nonsense. It was the ultimate medieval fuckboy excuse. Not my baby, milady. Must be the ghost of one of your previous lovers floating in there. Oi, the baby's got red hair. That's not mine. Probably from that bard you kissed at the Harvest Festival 3 summers ago. Men loved this logic. They'd shag and vanish faster than piss in the sun. 'Twas never their fault, oh no, the poor womb. That was like a bloody summer inn. Every traveler dropped by left a sock, maybe a cursed soul, and buggered off. A cartoon uterus shaped like a messy Airbnb. Each ghostly ex-boyfriend leaves behind something weird. One leaves a dirty tunic. One forgets his medieval selfie, a painting of himself flexing with a lute. One leaves STDs and emotional trauma scribbled on a scroll. Some lads even claimed, "Your womb's already full of spirits, milady. Wouldn't want to disturb them." As if shagging her was like waking up a haunted crypt. He crosses his arms, fake serious. It wasn't sex. It was spiritual archaeology, digging through ancient dicks to find the truth. "Oh no, darling, I didn't knock ye up. Must be the ghost of Gavin. You know, the lad you danced with 5 years ago. Strong jawline, smelled like onions. Could be his soul still floating in your cervix." He spits. Bollocks. They just didn't want to buy bread for the baby. Or worse, get married and share their turnips. Truth is, women were blamed for everything. The kid's ugly. Her fault. The kid's born early. Her womb rushed it out. The baby farts. Must be the devil in her. A baby farting in church. Priest gasps. Villagers grab torches again. Midwife whispers, "Told you she kissed a blacksmith once." So yeah, don't blame science. Blame horny lads with zero accountability. And a church that thought vaginas were haunted broom closets. The womb is a damn hard drive. No delete button. You want to know what the most mysterious part of a woman's body was back in the day? It wasn't her tits. Wasn't her coochie. Nah, it was the womb. The old baby cave. Now them church bastards didn't think of it as just a place for growing babies. Oh no. They believed it was like a bloody black box recorder, like the one on a crashing flying machine. Every time a woman had sex, they thought her womb recorded the soul of the man who went in. I shit you not. They thought every dick that entered left behind more than just sticky regrets. It left behind a piece of his bloody soul, like plugging a USB stick into a haunted laptop. Boop! New file saved Horny John's Soul X. And here's the best part. You couldn't delete it. No uninstall. No recycle bin. No CTRL+Z. Once it's in for life. So the more guys a woman slept with, the more soul files she supposedly collected in her womb. They literally believed that a woman turned into a damn walking hard drive, all stored in her lady vault. And every file, apparently, it chipped away at her purity and virtue like a drunk rat eating cheese. In their dumbass brains, she wasn't just a woman anymore. She was corrupted data.
her personality fragmented, her morals missing, her soul overwritten. Hell, they treated women like infected Windows 98 computers. Looked normal outside, but full of demons and Trojan horses inside.
And if that wasn't insane enough, wait for it, they also believed that if she got pregnant, then any one of those soul files could accidentally get copied into the baby. So if she'd slept with 6 men and then married a 7th, but got knocked up, they'd say, well, the kid don't look like the husband, 'cause maybe it's the soul of that 3rd guy from the barn that got stuck in her and jumped into the fetus, like the womb was some sketchy hotel room that never cleaned the sheets. Every guest left behind something, a sock, a toothpick, a fucking soul. And then, boom, 9 months later, the baby pops out with someone else's eyes, and the whole village screams, whore, and burns someone at the stake. I swear on me pig's grave. They even thought if a midwife laughed during childbirth, it meant she was summoning the devil with her mouth. Just one chuckle while catching the baby, and bam, the mob lights her up like a festival pig roast. So yeah, that's what passed for science back then. A woman's womb was basically a haunted flash drive. Sex was spiritual malware, and babies were mutant downloads gone wrong. And we wonder why medieval kids came out screaming. So what did all this womb madness lead to? You ask simple. Instead of falling in love or chasing butterflies in a field, women back then had to spend their whole bloody lives being human antivirus software, always on high alert. Not to catch feelings, but to avoid collecting more bloody soul files in their cursed lady folder. Nowadays, people call a woman easy if she sleeps around. Back then, they called her a cursed soul container, a bloody flesh USB full of haunted dicks. They truly believed a woman had to be as clean as a brand new CD, not a single file burned on it, before marriage. Otherwise, she was considered used goods like sour milk in a wine bottle. And the worst part, it didn't matter if she was in love. Nope, love didn't mean shit. Because if she picked the wrong bloke, slept with him, and he left, that was it. Her soul got corrupted. She wasn't just heartbroken, she was damned. They thought the womb wasn't just part of the body. It was a spiritual jail, and every man she shagged was like another inmate leaving graffiti on the walls. And guess what? They thought that graffiti could never be washed off. No holy bleach. No Q2RL plus LT DL. Just permanent slut stamps. So yeah, women back then couldn't date freely, couldn't kiss the wrong man, couldn't even daydream without risking their eternal RAM space, fall for the wrong guy. You didn't just get played, you lost your bloody womb, your reputation, or your actual head. Pick one. Love wasn't romantic back then. It was a death trap with no Wi-Fi and zero storage space. And that, my friend, is how we ended up with an entire generation of girls walking around like scared hard drives, praying no one accidentally uploaded another soul into them. Fucked up in it. You little modern shits have it good. Shut up and enjoy. Right. Let's get this out before I get the plague again. You Gen Z lot, sitting there on memory foam mattresses swiping left, like love's a bloody buffet. You've no idea how good you've got it. Back in my day, love hurt, literally, because the dildo was made of wood, and splinters are real. You're all crying over ghosting, please. I watched a lad get hanged because he kissed his missus without church permission. Try ghosting when you're swinging from a rope, your arse flapping in the wind.
You're whining about situationships. We had situations like, if I shag her, the Pope says I burn in hell, but if I don't, I'll die of blue balls and guilt. Not exactly a Tinder bio, that. Now, don't get me wrong, we wanted love too. We wanted cuddles. We wanted that good, sticky kind of affection. But what did we have? Cabbage stew, crotch rot, and a priest shouting, "Thou shalt not come," every Sunday. No orgasms before marriage, no jerking off in private, no touching your wife on a Tuesday. And God forbid she moaned during sex. That's how you got accused of witchcraft. You know what we used for foreplay? Staring. Just staring across a pigsty until one of us cracked and grunted. That was medieval dirty talk. No, I miss your body. Just your elbows look less crusty today. You twats have lube in 34 flavors. We had cow fat mixed with ashes. And when that burned, we said, "Praise be. I feel something." You've got vibrators, Bluetooth sex toys, and OnlyFans. We had potato dolls, goat bladders, and knitting yarn dildos. We fucked furniture food, and in desperate cases, wet hay. And if the goat walked in, that was a witness, not a kink. But here's the kicker, lads. We appreciated it. Every wiggle, every squelch, every accidental fire in the genitals, we cherished it. Because love wasn't easy. It was survival. I once saw a man craft a sex toy from a pig's rib and candle wax. It worked till it snapped inside him. He bled out. But his last words, she squealed. "That's good enough for me." Another time, a widow built a companion out of hay-old rags and the hair from her dead husband's beard. She cuddled it every night. Smelled like piss. But she called it darling. Don't tell me that ain't romantic. Meanwhile, you modern twats ghost someone after 3 dates because they blinked weird. Get a grip. You cry over unspoken tension. Try shagging in a barn while avoiding the priest, the pigs, your mum, and the Black Death. That's tension. You whinge about bad sex. Mate, back then we didn't even know where the clit was. In fact, the church said the clit was a demon's doorbell. If a woman moaned, they said Satan was ringing it from the inside. So we just stuck it in, closed our eyes, and hoped God wouldn't smite our dicks off. Today, you've got therapy books, online forums. Back then, our version of sex ed was a dying drunk saying, "Stick it in before it turns green, lad." Godspeed. You've got safe sex. We had cursed condoms made from fish skin, spermicide made from vinegar and sheep's urine, and STDs that made your dick whistle when you pissed. And that's if you survived childbirth, because guess what? Giving birth in the Middle Ages was like roulette with a rusty sword. So here's a truth for you. You're living in a golden age of touch, tits, and tenderness. And somehow you're still sad. Nobody's burning you for kissing a Protestant. Nobody's whipping you for fingering someone on a Sunday. Nobody's throwing horse shit at your house for giving your willy a tug. So why the long faces? You want love. Put your damn phone down. Touch grass. Touch someone. Hell, touch yourself. And be grateful you won't be jailed for it. Stop whining about bad vibes. And he left me on red. Back in my day, we left people on dead. You want heartbreak? Try having your one true love marry the blacksmith because her dad needed a new horseshoe. Try being gay in a town where they called that devil's gymnastics. Try falling for a nun, only to watch her get bricked inside a wall for lustful eye contact. And still, we found joy in stolen kisses behind latrines, in midnight touches under itchy blankets, in whispered promises that sounded more like prayers. So don't come at me with "it's so hard dating these days." You're not being hunted by inquisitors for liking feet. You're not being told that your wet dream is a message from Lucifer. You're not being burned alive because your boyfriend owns a cat. Now I know. The world's still hard. Loneliness still bites. But you've got choices, you lucky bastards. You've got tools, platforms, protection, education, and toys that plug into USB ports. We had rocks, regret, and goat fat. So next time you cry over a situationship, think of the man who made a fleshlight out of dried eel skin. Think of the woman who hid a turnip in her bedsheets and called it Sir Wiggles. Think of the priest who secretly made butt plugs out of communion candle stubs. Yeah, we know about that, Father Gregory. You don't need everything to be perfect. Sometimes it just needs to vibrate without catching fire. Sometimes love is messy, sticky, uneven, weird. But it's real, and it's yours to enjoy without fear of hellfire. So treasure it, because in the Middle Ages, the closest we got to intimacy was rubbing against each other under 12 layers of wool, while rats nibbled our toes and the church screamed that pleasure was evil. And now you lot get to moan without guilt. You get to date who you want. You get to fall in love without a dungeon waiting. So here's your medieval love advice from Old Shitty Pete. If it jiggles, squeaks, burns, or bites, trust me, we bloody tried it. Now go forth, get weird, get wet, get wholesome, but stop crying about dry spells when you've got the internet clean bed sheets and lube that doesn't involve sheep organs. Back then, love was survival. Today, just don't send you up at 3 a.m. and you're already better than 90%. Now piss off and go enjoy being alive in the only time in history where love doesn't come with a death sentence. And if your vibrator breaks, thank your lucky stars you're not boiling carrots again. The Midnight Rituals, secrets from the rotten core of the Dark Ages, the Church of Screams. They never built a bell tower, that chapel up the hill. Not 'cause they were poor, nah. The monks had gold enough to pickle their piss in silver goblets, but they feared the sound, said it might wake something. Locals called it the Church of Screams. No bell, no hymns, just a square block of damp stone that stank of old wax and wet flesh. And at night, if the wind blew just right through the trees, you'd hear it, like metal scraping bone, like lungs trying to scream through stitched lips. I once met a bloke what worked there. A kitchen lad thin as a chicken's shadow. Said he ran off after seeing them drag a child down to the cellar by its ankles. The kid weren't screaming, mind you, just twitching, like it already knew what came next. See, back then, if your baby didn't cry or cried too much or stared too long at the wall, they called it cursed, possessed, the devil in disguise. But the priests, oh, they had a cure. Exorcisms, they said. But it weren't no prayer and holy water. It were fists and knives. They'd bleed the child till the devil fled out through the wounds. They'd starve it till its body begged for death. And if it died, Well, they'd shrug. Guess God wanted it more than you did. One story sticks in me gut like a fish bone. There was a girl, nameless like the rest. They kept her in a locked room. She had a laugh that echoed like broken bells. Said she spoke to shadows and refused to eat bread. They cut out her tongue, but every night the monks swore they heard her laugh again, louder, angrier. Weeks later, one by one, the monks disappeared, vanished like piss on hot stone. When they broke down the door to her cell, all they found was a circle of blood, still warm, and a single black feather. No bird, no girl, just silence. No screams since then. So now the place rots. No services, no candles, just that empty tower where a bell never hung. But some nights, when I'm too drunk to sleep and the moon looks like it's bleeding, I swear I hear it. Not a bell, a giggle. And I wonder, was it ever the devil inside them kids? Or was the real devil wearing a collar and cross laughing as he broke 'em open, just to hear what their souls sounded like? Plague doctors' forbidden experiments. They came cloaked in black with beaks like crows and eyes of glass. Folks called them plague doctors, but they weren't saints. They were vultures in robes scavenging, not for hope, but for horror. See, in the chaos of the Black Death, when half the village was shitting blood and the other half were digging graves, no one asked questions. You saw a man in a mask. You prayed he'd pass your door. But behind those locked infirmary doors, where the walls sweated fever and despair, some of them weren't trying to save lives. They were collecting them. I once found a torn journal buried behind a chapel wall. The pages smelled like vinegar and sin. It weren't no healing manual. It was a catalog of torment. One entry read, Subject 47 opened at dawn. Organs removed while heart still beat. When spleen was boiled, steam rose in the shape of a woman, possibly the soul. Ain't that something? They boiled organs to see the soul evaporate. They cut into live men not to cure, but to witness what left the body first. Does the soul crawl out through the lungs, they wondered? Does pain call the devil home? They'd chain the sick to stone slabs, cut 'em open like meat pies, pour mercury into their ears just to watch 'em scream backwards. No screams, they'd slice the feet to the bone. Said agony helped the spirit separate faster. And when they died, oh, they weren't buried. They were catalogued, hung upside down to drain sin, skinned in strips to examine the texture of disease, eyeballs plucked and floated in jars labeled purgatory liquor. Even the blood, yes, the blood was filtered, boiled, and sipped. They believed the essence of death lived in the final drop, down in the plague vaults where air don't move and rot hangs like curtains. Some rooms still hold their tools. I've seen them. Tables with claw marks, hooks still dripping rusted crimson. A child's shoe nailed to the wall beside a skull cut neatly in quarters. And on the stone, words carved in Latin. To see the light, we must first peel the flesh. No prayers down there. No forgiveness. Just the stink of curiosity gone rabid. And maybe, just maybe, the souls they tried to steam out never really left. Sometimes, when I pass by them sealed cellars, I hear the hiss of hot iron, a wet squelch, and breathin', but not mine, like something still waitin' to be boiled. The pig trials. You think humans are the top of the food chain, masters of reason. In the Middle Ages we put pigs on trial. Real fucking trials. Judges, scribes, verdicts. All for a bloody farm animal. Why? 'Cause someone decided the pig was possessed by the devil. Yeah, that's not a metaphor. I remember the old records. France, 1386. A sow was found guilty of murdering a child. They dressed the beast in a waistcoat, gave it a court-appointed defender, poor bastard, and held a full courtroom hearing. The verdict, guilty. The sentence, public hanging. And it wasn't just pigs. Dogs, goats, cows, even chickens got their necks stretched. One rooster was burned alive for laying an egg, which to them meant Satan was nesting nearby. Logic. Not in this fucking century. But the worst story, the one that made even my lice crawl. A village priest once claimed he heard a pig speak in Latin. Said the creature stared him down and whispered, "Ego sum veritas, I am the truth." The villagers lost their minds, thought the devil himself had snorted through the pig's nostrils, so they chained it to the altar, held a week-long exorcism, and when that didn't work, they boiled it alive in holy water. The screams didn't sound like Latin, but they sure as shit weren't animal air either. Something in that voice made grown men wet themselves and beg for mercy. Even now, folks say the church bell rings by itself on the pig's death day. No one touches that chapel anymore. Too many shadows without owners. We didn't just punish beasts for crimes. We believed they were tools of hell, sent to test our faith, to spy, to spread sin. One town executed a swarm of locusts by nailing a trial notice to a tree, telling the bugs to leave within 3 days. When they didn't, they cursed the fields and called it justice. You think I'm joking? I wish I was. We hanged a goat once because it sneezed during Mass, claimed it was laughing at the priest, and a rooster who crowed 3 times before dawn, burnt at the stake. Judas's bird, they said. We didn't need monsters from hell. We were the monsters. You Gen Z lot think cancel culture's rough. Imagine being a chicken who blinked at the wrong bishop and ended up roasted in the name of God. So next time you bite into bacon, just ask yourself, was this pig judged innocent, or did it die screaming Latin into the flames? The bone market. By the time the moon rose red over the moor, the bone market had already begun to breathe. It was never in the same place twice. One night, it slithered behind the ruined chapel. Another, it bloomed like rot beneath the gallows tree. Tonight it pulsed in a forgotten hollow, where grave dirt cracked beneath the boots of cloaked traders, and every step released a faint scent of embalmed rot and mildew. Here bones weren't just bones. They were currency. Medicine, magic, murder. A hunched hag with hands like bird claws was selling a ribcage wrapped in faded velvet. From a midwife who drowned herself, makes babies sleep like the dead. She whispered, eyes glinting like wet coal. Next to her, a butcher with a crimson apron hacked vertebrae from a still warm corpse, steam rising into the chill air. He grunted as he turned toward a buyer. Fresh from the priest's grave, still full of repentance. The buyers didn't ask questions. They paid in silver, in secrets, in blood. A veiled man unwrapped a small cloth parcel. Inside the shriveled fingers of an infant's skin, waxy nails blackened. "Charm for binding love," he muttered. "Especially when the lover sleeps." The buyer, a trembling girl no older than 16, nodded and handed him a lock of her own hair. A bell rang somewhere in the dark, low and bone-dull. New wares had arrived. 4 men emerged, dragging a sack. It thudded wetly, and from the tear near the bottom, a pale face peered out, mouth open in a scream, eyes glassy with fear. A freshly dug woman, still wearing her wedding veil. The vendor kicked the sack with indifference. "Widow's pelvis, rare shape. Said to bring luck in childbirth." In a corner near the deadwood altar, a cauldron boiled. Its contents were unknown, but villagers had whispered of its scent, a mix of burnt herbs, and something, sweeter something, that turned stomachs and memories. Rumor claimed they'd once seen an old apothecary ladle the broth into jars, muttering blessings in a forgotten tongue. Someone swore they'd found a human molar floating in the dregs. Others whispered it was baby fat rendered with wolf's blood and dried placenta drunk to ward off plague and bad dreams. One boy, drunk and foolish, swore he saw something move inside the cauldron, something with too many fingers. Around the edges of the market, talismans hung like skinned rats' bones, bound with red string skulls painted with curses, tiny spines carved with sigils no sane man could read. The air shimmered with heat, though no fire burned, and the shadows seemed to bend in unnatural angles. Somewhere a scream tried to rise, but choked itself silent. The bone market did not tolerate hesitation. At dawn, it would vanish. No trace, no blood, no bones, except the one wedged behind your ear, still warm, still whispering your name. The man who ate memories, they whisper of him in the dead hush between church bells, when even rats dare not scratch. The man who ate memories. Long ago he was just a monk, quiet, obedient, a man of scripture and silence. They said he once read all 7 volumes of St. Elric's Tears of the Soul without blinking, but something inside him snapped. Maybe it was the plague, maybe it was the silence, or maybe it was the voice in the walls that no one else heard. One night, the other brothers found him in the ossuary, kneeling before an open skull like it was the Holy Grail. He was scooping the rotten pulp of a dead monk's brain into his mouth with 2 fingers, eyes rolled back in ecstasy. He claimed the soul was still inside. "Memories are not in the heart," he whispered, blood oozing from his gums. "They're in the meat." They locked him away, of course, but he sang through the stone, lullabies in forgotten tongues, and laughed, oh, how he laughed. A high, wet giggle that sounded like a child choking. The other monks began to change. One forgot how to speak. Another forgot his name. A third wandered naked into the woods, muttering someone else's prayers. Within a week, half the monastery had either gone mad or vanished. When they finally opened the door, they found the monk dead, or what was left of him. He had carved open his own skull with a shard of the chapel's stained glass. What he'd done next was worse, eaten his own brain, what he could reach anyway. The rest of it twitched on the floor, like a slug caught in salt. It didn't stop moving for hours. They tried to burn the body, but the smoke made people scream. A boy who smelled it now lives in the pigsty digging holes with his teeth. And that would have been the end, if not for the laughing. Every year on the eve of the red moon, someone in the village hears it. A giggle just behind the ear. Too close, too warm, and always, always followed by silence, because whoever hears it doesn't last long. They forget who they are. They forget how to walk, how to breathe, how to cry. And then they open their bellies, slowly, methodically, like they're trying to peel something out. Something they don't remember, but need to find. One man carved words into his own intestines before he died. I know her name again. No one knows who her is. Pete swears he heard the laugh once. Sounded like meat boiling in a child's throat, he says. I bit my own tongue off to drown it out. He shows the scar, pink and puckered like a slug sleeping under his lip. Don't listen, he warns. If you hear it, stuff your ears with mud shit or lies, anything. Because once you hear him laugh, it means he's hungry. And you are full of memories. The Virgin Bell. In the center of the village stood the old church, crumbling stone and ivy-choked windows, forgotten by time, but never truly silent. High above, in the bell tower, hung the Virgin Bell. They said it was forged from iron and blood virgins' blood drawn drop by drop from 12-year-old girls under the guise of divine sacrifice. The priests called it the offering of purity. The villagers called it salvation. But Pete remembered what really happened. They said it was for God. Pete muttered, his eyes distant. Told little girls to come pray and bring their faith. And a bowl. He spat. 12 years old, scared out her teeth. They drained her dry. Told her it was holy. Told her it would save us all. Nobody ever saw her after. Not even her mother. The bell was cast, with her blood still warm, still full of childhood and terror. It rang only on the darkest days, when plague crept in, or crops bled rot, or the villagers whispered of shadows in their sleep. Its sound wasn't a peal. It was a wail. A shriek stretched thin with pain and metal. Those who heard it up close said it didn't echo. It clung, wrapping around your ribs like cold fingers. No one rang it now. Not after what happened to Brother Marrow. He was the last to touch it, ordered to ring it during the blood moon to ward off a fever that turned children blue and breathless. He climbed the crooked stairs with prayer in his throat and sweat on his back. When he pulled the rope, the sound split the air like a scream trapped in a coffin. He was never the same. Pete saw him 3 days later naked, but for a crown of thorns crawling through the sheep field. He kept saying he saw her, the girl, said her eyes were sewn shut, but she still watched him. Marrow muttered nonsense, tried to bless a stump, and offered communion to a dead crow. They found him dead beneath the altar, kneeling before a goat. His hands were blistered eyes gouged out by his own fingers. In his mouth, a shred of a girl's prayer ribbon. The church sealed the tower after that. Boards, locks, iron nails soaked in holy water. But even now, some nights when the wind is thick and the moon hides her face, you can hear it, the Virgin Bell, ringing itself. One note, then another. a melody made of madness. Pete won't go near the church anymore. It don't ring for God, he says. It rings for her. And if you hear it, call your name. Best pray you ain't pure, because she's still thirsty. The Feast of the Damned. It was never written in any holy book, nor whispered in confessional. But some say, if you dig deep enough beneath the monastery's wine cellar, you'll find the banquet hall of the damned, where the candles never go out, and the air still smells of roasted sin. They called themselves the Order of Divine Hunger. Clerics, scribes, even nobles in disguise, all drawn together by a sacred hunger they claimed came from God. They believed the soul could ascend not through prayer, but through consumption. To feel the divine, they had to devour the most sacred flesh of all man. More precisely, the living heart. On the last night of winter, when the air was thin and the stars hung like rotten teeth, they gathered. Ropes of garlic and ash hung from the ceiling, not to ward off demons, but to invite them. A girl was brought in, barely 17, trembling in a white shift, eyes blindfolded and mouth sewn shut. They said silence made her soul purer. As the red wine boiled, they carved her chest open, not with cruelty, but with reverence. The heart was lifted, still beating, steaming in the cold air. It was dropped whole into a copper pot filled with sacramental wine, blackberries, cloves, and bits of parchment scribbled with angelic names. They stirred it clockwise, sang in reverse Latin, and drank until they wept. Some claimed they saw wings made of eyes and mouths. One man screamed that an angel kissed him through the hole in his own chest. Another vomited up teeth not his own. But they kept feasting. Every year, one more victim. Always young, always living, always silent. And every year, they swore their visions grew clearer. Angels on fire, choirs of bleeding infants, the face of God weeping in an oven. They believed they were being purified, enlightened. Pete, of course, saw it differently. Bunch of robe-wearing bastards gnawed on hearts like pigs, he said, gnashing his few remaining teeth. Claimed it was for heaven, but they only fed their rot. They ate hearts, but the thing that really died was humanity. One year they chose the wrong girl. She did not scream. She did not cry. As they lifted her onto the stone slab, she whispered a word no one understood. Then another, and another. The walls cracked. The wine turned black. The fire screamed. By morning, they were found, what was left of them, slumped at the table, smiling, eyes burned out, mouths open as if still chewing. The heart had returned to the girl's chest, but it beat no longer. Some say the feast continues underground, that the copper pot still bubbles stirred by invisible hands, that on winter nights you can hear laughter echoing beneath the earth-wet, hollow inhuman, and if you ever wake up with a hunger you can't explain, pray, because the next heart they serve might be yours. Whisper from the dead. They buried them head first, eyes down, mouths full of ash, not out of mercy, but fear. Pete hobbled through the crooked iron gates of the old graveyard lantern, hissing wind, wheezing through cracked tombstones like a dying hymn. This place, he said, don't whisper the names of the dead. It chokes on them. The ground here isn't soft. It groans. shallow graves' bones too close to the surface. Some say if you listen, you'll hear fingernails scraping upward. Not to escape, just to scream. Back in the old days, they believed the dead could rise, not as saints, but as spiteful shadows. And so they flipped them. Heads down, hearts broken, hope strangled. That way, if the corpse woke, it would dig deeper, not upward. They thought it was clever, Pete muttered, spitting into the dirt. But burying fear don't kill it, just feeds it. He pointed at a lopsided cross, marked only with a crude handprint. That one witch boy, they said, spoke in tongues, dreamed other people's dreams. So they shoved him in the ground, with his mouth sewn shut, and a brick between his thighs. And over there, a mass grave, no names, just rusted nails scattered across the top. A priest's trick to pin the soul in place. You see, they didn't fear death. They feared what followed. They feared the unfinished, the murdered, the silenced, the cursed. One legend tells of a girl buried alive after the virgin bell rang wrong. They say her final breath still lingers, curling like smoke from cracks in the stone. Every few years, someone in the village hears it, a soft sigh behind them in an empty room. When they turn, no one's there, but their shadow looks heavier. Pete paused at a broken marker, kneeling with a grunt. I saw a man once dig up his wife. Swore he saw her walking at night, humming their wedding song backwards. Dug her up to make it stop. He chuckled low and cold. All he found was his own wedding ring clenched in her teeth. The lantern flickered, and somewhere beneath their feet, something shifted. The graveyard never truly sleeps. The soil remembers. It remembers the shame, the secrets, the things done to keep the world clean. But the dead don't forget. They only wait. For every bone twisted wrong, Pete said, for every truth choked in the dark, there's a whisper waiting. A crow screamed. Pete stood, eyes hollow beneath the brim of his tattered hood. We buried guilt, buried pain, buried people. The wind stilled, the lantern died, and all this time we feared ghosts and demons. He turned slowly toward the reader, face a mask of dirt and memory. But maybe, his voice cracked like dry earth, maybe the only thing we ought to fear now is ourselves. Lessons from the Middle Ages for the wounded, the weary, and the wide awake at 3 a.m. That is the Middle Ages in a whisper, a world of pain, fear, and unrelenting survival, where people kept going anyway. And maybe that's the lesson we forgot. You are not as alone as you think. In the 14th century, loneliness didn't live in empty apartments. It festered in huts during winter, in the silence after plague carts rolled past in the pew where a child used to sit before coughing blood. But somehow people still sang, still prayed, still fell in love. Some nights monks scratched poems into cold stone walls just to remember what it felt like to speak. You may feel alone right now. The ache may be heavy, quiet, crawling. But you are not the first to feel it. You won't be the last to survive it. Rest is not laziness. It's rebellion. Peasants worked from sunup to sundown. When they collapsed, it wasn't because they were weak. It was because the body has limits. You're not a machine.
You're not meant to be always on. That pressure to perform, to produce, to be okay all the time, that's not divine. That's modern madness. In the Middle Ages, people still rested on holy days. They wept when they needed to. They slept when they could. Sometimes in straw, sometimes in the arms of someone just as tired. You have the right to rest, to heal, to pause. You do not owe the world your constant motion. Even in darkness, they dreamed. Imagine living in a time when the sky might kill you. Hail fire, God's punishment, when your village might vanish from disease by nightfall. And still, they painted ceilings with stars, wrote lullabies, brewed love potions, whispered wishes into the wind. There is something achingly beautiful about humans in darkness, still daring to dream. Your dream matters, even the quiet one, especially the one you don't tell anyone. If medieval minds could find hope in candlelight and church bells, you can find it in the morning. Coffee, the sound of rain, the softness of breath. You come from survivors. Your ancestors made it through famines, crusades, bloodletting, leech medicine, and 10,000 kinds of loss. Do you understand what that means? You are not weak. You are a walking inheritance of impossible survival. You have courage in your bones, shaped by generations who should have died but didn't. They didn't have therapy apps. They had prayers, screams, and each other. But still, they lived. And so will you. Healing takes time, and that's okay. Back then, healing came slowly. A wound could fester for weeks. Bones were set with splints made of twigs and hope. Emotional wounds, those lasted lifetimes. So if you're still hurting from something that happened last month or last decade, let yourself be. Stop expecting yourself to move on like grief is a race. It's not. It's a long road with wrong turns and nights that feel endless. Some pain is medieval. It takes a while to die, but it softens, and you grow stronger in the places that hurt the worst. Sometimes, just making it to tomorrow is a victory. A peasant's victory wasn't a mansion. It was a good harvest, a warm blanket, a day without fever. Your victories matter too, even the ones that seem small. Brushed your teeth. Victory. Sent the email you've been avoiding. Victory. Got out of bed. Massive victory. Your survival is no less noble than a knight's. Your fight may be quieter, but it is just as brave. Fear was real. So was faith. In the Middle Ages, people feared death demons, excommunication. They also believed in miracles, saints, second chances. Fear didn't cancel faith. They walked side by side. You don't have to be fearless to keep going. You can shake, stumble, cry, collapse, and still get up again. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to continue. You are not done yet. The world tells you to be fixed, to be finished, to be fine. But the Middle Ages didn't care about polish. They celebrated process stories told over fire wine, fermenting in the dark-stained glass that took years to complete. You are a cathedral still being built. Let yourself be unfinished. Let yourself be in progress. That's where the beauty lives. Pete would say this, too, if old shitty Pete
could speak from the plague piss alleys of history, heed, so sleep if you can. If your heart's still heavy, your eyes wide at midnight, remember this. You are not the first to suffer. You are not the first to survive. You are part of something ancient, cracked, and holy. The world is cruel, but you are still here. And in that fact, in your broken, breathing body, is a quiet kind of glory. Good night, traveler. You made it this far. Rest well. Tomorrow remembers.